Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. The Sacramento City Council will please come to order. Would the clerk please call the roll so that we might establish a quorum?
Thank you. Councilmember Warren.
Here.
Vice Mayor Harris.
Here.
Councilmember Hanson.
Here, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Chenier.
Here.
Councilmember Guerra.
Here.
Councilmember Jennings.
Here.
Councilmember Carr.
Here.
And Mayor Steinberg.
I am here. Thank you very much. I'd ask anyone who can stand, please stand. I ask Vice Mayor Harris to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. Salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. Let me begin by just saying that our thoughts, and more than our thoughts, our Sacramento Fire Department is out in the north area of the city combating a fire and potentially a major fire at or around Alberta and Powerline Road. And I know that Councilmember Ashby is out there looking out for her constituents, but all of us here are going to keep tabs on what is happening and know that our fire department is on it, and we hope for the best. I just wanted to start by saying that. Thank you. Let us begin today's meeting with the consent calendar. Are there any items on the consent calendar that members want to talk about? Once we finish the consent calendar, I'm going to lay out a slightly revised agenda here in terms of the order of the other items, but I'll hold off on that until after we finish the consent calendar.
Mayor, I'm going to recuse myself from item 10. My wife has worked as a consultant with the group that is getting the grant, so I want to make sure that there's no problem.
Okay, that shall be noted. Councilmember Chenier. Anybody else? We do have two callers, I understand it. Let's hear from the public.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, and I just wanted to address item 3. I want to make a couple comments about that.
You want to do that now, or do you want to wait till after the public testimony?
I can wait until after the public.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. First caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Thank you very much. Mayor Steinberg and honorable members of the council, my name is Jenna Abbott and I'm the executive director of the River District. I'm calling you today because I'd like to register some concern about item number 12 on the consent calendar. The River District would like to be involved in the discussion of items like this rather than learning about them on a city council agenda. Time after time, we hear about things that are going to impact our business leaders in the River District when they're already far down the pipe. We are told again and again, we're really sorry. We wish we would have had time to do the outreach, but we didn't, so we just went ahead. I would respectfully ask, while we agree that servicing our unhoused neighbors is critical and sanitation is critical, there's no detail on how long this program will go on, what this almost $800,000 will be used for, where will these restrooms be placed, and what kind of outreach will be done to ready the businesses who will be impacted. We would kindly request that this item be tabled until such time as the River District has the opportunity to be included in those discussions. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I have no more callers.
Okay, Councilmember Warren, you want to make a comment on item 3?
Yes, I just wanted to, again, just thank city staff, and we're doing some good work in the district around improving transportation and streets and such. And so anytime I see these types of investments being made in one of the older parts of our city, I just wanted to acknowledge it. So I want to say thank you to Howard and staff and the rest of the team.
Very good. Thank you very much, Councilmember Warren. Can I get a motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to address the comments by Jenna Abbott on
Yes,
item number
of
12. So
Go ahead.
you and I and Phil Cerna participated in somewhat of a town hall in the River District in which they asked for more resources to deal with trash and feces in the River District. This item, number 12, is in direct reaction to their request. And for Jen Abbott's information, it's basically a revisit of Pit Stop program, only much more mobile. So the intention is not to place restrooms in any one particular spot. And these units, being very portable, could be used citywide. But what I asked for at council was for $1 million to address issues in the River District. And what we came up with was 700,000+ to do a revisiting of Pit Stop and also to get advanced trash pickup in the River District. So I wanted to clear that up, that this was, a direct response to their request. And yes, things are pretty fast moving these days. It's CARES Act money and it needs to be expended quickly. And, if you wait for things to take 2 months or 3 months to go through the mill, then you miss out on the opportunity. So I'd be happy to speak to Ms. Abbott personally, and I will make that effort. But this is a good program and it will help the River District. Thank you, Mayor, and I'll move consent.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Moved by Vice Mayor Harris. Is there a second on the consent
Second.
calendar? Thank you. By Councilmember Warren, was it?
Yes.
Okay, let's note that again, Councilmember Chenier is going to abstain on item 10. With that understanding, let's call the roll on.
Recuse myself, not abstain.
Excuse me, recuse. That's right. Thank you. Let's call the roll on the consent calendar.
Councilmember Warren,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harris,
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson, Councilmember Chenier,
Aye.
Councilmember Guerra,
Aye.
Councilmember Jennings,
Aye.
Councilmember Carr,
Aye.
and Mayor Steinberg.
Aye. All right, members, let's move to the discussion calendar. And I want to take a few moments here because I think it'll make the discussion this afternoon even more productive. There are three discussion items, including the Measure U Community Advisory Committee item that relate to various aspects of the city budget and city priorities. And we're not going to take them together. I want to suggest the order in a moment, but I want to kind of give you a big picture of what it is I hope that we can all accomplish together this afternoon. Over the past several days, the city manager and I and our teams have worked closely together to assess our city's fiscal situation in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Specifically, we have been looking at our various commitments and our aspirations for our community, together with our COVID-19 revenue-related challenges, to see if, in fact, we can meet these commitments and begin to move in the direction of our aspiration. So this afternoon, weaved throughout these various items and presentations, we will present a plan through several reports and recommendations that will try to accomplish the following. Number one, we will present a funding strategy for the vast majority of district CIP projects, including those which meet the clear definition of inclusion. Number two, we will promise publicly to follow through on the Sacramento River Levee project championed by Councilmember Jennings. Three, we will present a funding strategy, the beginning of a funding strategy for systemic public safety reform, with the potential to shift tens of thousands of calls, non-public safety calls, to a new department of community response. Fourth, we will present a funding strategy to continue funding key youth initiatives, including the very successful pilot to provide free transit passes to all of our young people, championed by Councilmember Chenier. We will present potential funding strategy for the first participatory budgeting commitment that we intend to make in our city. Sixth, we will present a strategy to save millions of dollars by at least temporarily freeing hundreds of vacant positions. We will present all of the above without threatening city employees on the public safety and on the non-public safety sides with layoffs or having to harm in any way essential city services. All of this, of course, on top of the $89 million of CARES investment, which has thus far been a jolt of hope and confidence in so many areas of our community where people are struggling. I would just say editorially before we begin, not bad for a pandemic that has caused huge disruption and massive deficits for so many cities. So this is how I would like to proceed. I want to begin first with the 2021 fiscal update and solutions for some of what I have just described, especially on the CIP side. After that, I would like to do the vacancy update, which will also present the opportunity to escrow, if you will, millions of dollars that we can potentially use on the council and community's priorities. After that, we would like to hear from the Measure U Advisory Committee and their recommendations. After that, under the category of City Manager's Report, we want to get a detailed update and report on the progress of the Office of Community Response, led by Interim Director Bridget Dean. And then after that, and it isn't an afterthought because it's a very important item, we will take up the whole person care issue, which is another opportunity with new resources to be able to help more of our homeless population. So I think today should be a rich day in terms of content and in terms of imperfect as always, but trying to actually realize so many of the opportunities that are out there for the people we represent. So let us begin with the fiscal update. And City Manager, I turn it over to you and your finance team to talk about how we have attempted to land at least the beginning of some of these priorities.
Thank you, Mayor. So before I turn it over to Lainey Milstein to present on the actual inner workings of what this funding plan looks like, I first want to remind the council that we committed to coming back to council to talk about what our fiscal position looks like once we had more information. And as you know, going through this pandemic, we had an expectation of reopening our economy come July 1. Obviously, that's not happened. We've actually taken a minor step back. So we're reforecasting what those revenues look like in light of these changes. In addition, we've had some additional feedback from our sales tax consultants and others about what that looks like going into the balance of this fiscal year. Having said all that, to piggyback on what you shared, we're looking at ways that we can fund these council priorities, these additional council priorities on top of the prior commitments made by this council, and do it in a fashion that doesn't harm the general fund and have some feedback from this council about some of the strategies we will use. So with that, I want to turn it over to Lainey to walk us through some of the potential options we have for doing exactly what I described.
Ms. Milstein.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Lainey Milstein, Assistant City Manager. The item before you requests council direction to identify resources to fund council-directed initiatives or new costs as identified as a result of the pandemic since budget adoption on May 12th. These are outlined in the council report on page 2. I'd like to point out that there are updates to the chart on page 4 of the council report as this item went to print. The item for St. John's Shelter and City of Refuge has been removed as they received funding from an alternate resource. And the item from SHRA So the cost associated with the Meadowview shelter has been reduced by $160,000 to reflect costs only through January 31st, 2021. As the city manager mentioned, in preparation for this report, staff initiated a review of projects and revenue in order to identify resources to fund the identified initiatives and costs. The revenues and resources identified in the chart on page 4 provide council with an opportunity to fund most of the identified costs. As council directs the city manager to proceed with funding needs and initiatives as identified, staff will return with the reports necessary to establish budgets and for the identified initiatives and revenue investments. I'm not going to get into explicit detail on the rest of the revenue assumptions that the city manager also mentioned. Sales tax information is very preliminary. And given that we don't have any detail unwinding what actually happened in April through June, and forecasting for July through September is nearly impossible. We continue to try and gather any kinds of information and indicators as to what might be coming. We will provide that information to council as soon as it becomes available. This concludes my presentation and am available for questions and council.
Oh,
Laney, would you mind showing the updated spreadsheet as well?
Sure. About as big as I can get it and show all of the information on the page. Are we seeing that?
yeah. Might I is that okay, just for a moment, if I if you put it back on the screen, please, Laney? Please.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Because I think it is the important operative document here that certainly the council members and I hope the public,
Sorry, I apologize. One more try at this. There we go.
Are we good?
Yeah, shrink it just
Yep.
a little bit, Laney, so we can see the full page.
We're going to shrink it
sure.
just a little.
A little bit more.
A little more.
There you go.
Hey.
That's the whole
So-
page without the title.
Here are some bottom lines, or at least some highlights that I want to point out to you as we launch the discussion. Number one, the end balance, when we look at all of our, quote, commitments, and again, I want to say participatory budgeting is going to be a separate discussion under the Measure U construct. But when you look at all of our commitments and you look at our sources of funding, we end up, after a lot of wrestling and back and forth, with an $857,000 surplus. We are able, under this framework, to fund all of the CIPs with one asterisk, and that is the asterisk is that in conversation with Councilmember Jennings, we are going to fund and refund the River Parkway Levy project in a couple of months because it still needs some more preparatory work before the money is ready. But I want to say publicly here, as I said to Councilmember Jennings privately, that I am, to the degree that I have any power and authority, I am good for that money. We've got to follow through on that. That is a community promise. And obviously, Councilmember Jennings has championed this, and these are my constituents too. With regard to the other CIPs, the members fought very hard for all of these, and I view them as a promise that I, as your mayor, made to you as well, because they're all part of the 2019 and 2020 budget memos. And so we make those whole and good. We also still commit $5 million to the Office of Community Response, but we only need $4 million to get started over the course of the next year. And when Bridget Dean comes up later in the meeting, we'll be able to get into a little bit more detail as well. SHRA, again, I want to thank Lachelle Dozier because she's been a great partner around helping us cash flow some of the resources related to the Meadowview shelter, so that gets us a little bit of relief. But we're able to fund the youth initiatives, the bus passes, the youth pop-ups, the Office of Community Response, and the CIPs, again, with a continued promise to Councilmember Jennings and the community to do the Sac River levee capital projects. And we're able to do all of this without negatively impacting the general fund in any way. In fact, $857,000 left over. So I think that's a pretty good launch, but I think we ought to keep that up here as we begin the discussion, because this is, there may be a lot of questions about how we get there. Obviously, there's some Golden One Center issues. We do have a liquidity reserve, and yes, we do use that for now. And that liquidity reserve is going to have to be replaced as quickly as possible, but certainly over time. But that's what a liquidity reserve is for. It's a pandemic, for crying out loud. I mean, and this is, we want to fulfill our promises. And that is what we are endeavoring to do here. So I hope that's enough of an introduction to be able to get comments from the council members. This is not a vote. This is just a feedback and direction, but I know how important the CIP projects are all to all the members. They're important to me. These are community enhancements as part of what we promised. Some of them, like in Alan Warren's district, I mean, the clear definition of inclusion around those ball fields. We have to follow through, and we have to follow through now. But I'll leave it to all of you to comment and see where the members are. We don't have any public testimony here. So let's move to the council.
Yes, a couple questions, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Laney, on the bus passes, with the schools operating remotely, is that a realistic a number?
Council member, we have worked very closely with RT. They actually tell us that if school goes back in session, it'll increase by $250,000. So $750 was their estimate for this time frame based on current ridership. We are structuring this, or would propose to structure this contract as a reimbursement basis versus the last time we gave them the $1 million. This time we will only spend what they spend on providing the free bus pass.
I see. So what assumptions are made about when school is opening, when there will be in-person instruction?
At this moment, there are no such assumptions because the school district has opened with a virtual opening, and I don't believe there are actions to move forward in Sacramento County with in-person instructions at this time.
So this has the potential of some of that 750,000 adding on to the 857 bottom line.
Taking away from, that's correct. The 750 could get bigger if school does open for in-person instruction.
And the other way as well, if school does not open for in-person instruction, some of the 750 that we have programmed for bus passes could get added to the bottom line of 857,000.
Unfortunately, this estimate is based on school not opening for the rest of the year.
Well, and if I might add, Councilmember Carr, that is exactly why it's structured in a way that it's actual use. We just don't know what that's going to be, but it has the potential to go both ways.
Yeah. And the second question is on the Meadowview shelter. The $13 million that we got from the state, it was my understanding that that was to be used to both construct and operate the shelter for 2 years. Why do we have this other $220,000 on that shelter?
Right.
I believe that's correct. Is Lachelle on the line? Ms. Dozier, if you're on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Go
So
ahead. Go ahead.
The money that is listed there, Councilmember Carr, is the administration money for SHRA to run and operate the shelter. If you recall at the very beginning, one of the things I remember you were adamant that we would have enough resources to run the shelter. So that is the money that was set aside for operation of the shelter. So we're only estimating it through the end of January.
So the original allocation of over 13 million from the state didn't include any money for actually running the shelter?
That's a question, I think. Howard, do you have that information, or Laney?
My understanding is that this is not the cost of running the shelter. This is actually the SHRA's cost of administering the program. And 760,000 of the 880 goes to SHRA administration and 120,000 for utility. And that was not included in the funding that we received from the state. Perhaps Emily can provide additional detail on how that was broken down.
Does that answer the question, Councilmember Carr?
And she was saying Emily might be able to provide some additional detail. I was waiting for Emily.
I'm
My
sorry.
apologies. Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was trying to get my headphones in. Yes. So my recollection, so Meadowview is funded in part by HEAP, which funded the construction. The state funds do come with an admin component. And the HAP funds, which are paying in part for the operations, also come with an admin component. So there is a portion of admin allowed by the state funding.
Right, and Councilman Carr, this is a number that we negotiated with SHRA at the onset of the shelter at Meadowview. So what we've done here is we've teed up the first portion of that admin fee through the end of January, and we're waiting to see what year-end results look like and mid-year projections. So we anticipate making them whole on the full 880, but we're just working through a cash flow issue now.
Okay, so the SHRA administration is not allowed by the state when they gave us the HEAP funds?
It is allowed by the state council member. It's just that the SHRA costs are in excess of what we have available in state funding. So we are making up for that difference with this additional funding.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Carr. Let's hear from Councilmember Hanson.
I'm here. Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to thank you, the city manager, Assistant City Manager Milstein, from the staff report that published on Thursday to now. I think this is a great improvement, but it also just reflects a lot of work that was done by our city staff and your team, Mayor, to ensure that the projects on that CIP list, which virtually all were neighborhood projects in parks that benefit the community at the neighborhood level, were protected and preserved as we work through the challenges of the COVID crisis and its economic impact on the general fund. I know that there's a lot more that goes into building the city budget than just what we've talked about here today. And we're going to talk about vacancies as well as other things this afternoon. But I do know that there's no greater manifestation of the city's impact on our residents than these soccer fields, the parks resources, the sports complexes that most people rely on in their own neighborhood. And so I'm really grateful that we're able to protect those. And I want to thank Councilmember Jennings for being willing to work through this process of ensuring that the parkway is completed, but that those resources be held until we know more about the budget itself. That was a very thoughtful gesture on behalf of the city. And I know Councilmember Jennings, as well as others, have been working on matching funds from SACOG for that particular project. And I'm hopeful that as we get through mid-year, the balance sheet improves based on sales tax and property tax, and that we can proceed with all the projects that the council had committed to. Thank you, Mayor. And on the RT issue, as the chair of the RT board right now, Mr. Carr, I know our staff are very closely at RT watching this. A lot of the youth, even though they may not be physically in school, may participate in work outside of school. They may still need to get around, and I think they are still using these passes, despite the fact that it's described as a school pass. It's really about allowing these youth to get around and have more autonomy to support themselves and their communities. So this is a great thing that was championed by Councilmember Schneer. So thanks, and I'm very glad to see us moving forward in this direction.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Of course, I'm very excited about this turn of events and that it means that I might be able to build the Garden and Arts Center in South Potomas, which we gathered the money for over a year ago. So Lainey, I do have a question though. If I'm reading this right, we're funding some of these capital projects with the liquidity reserve. Is that correct?
That's the adjustment that we made to the chart in order to provide resources for the capital project.
So in a sense, we're kind of betting on the come for mid-year to be more, you know, what's to say, optimistic. And if, you know, I'm obviously, if COVID turns and sales tax revenue rebounds, then we've made a great decision. If it does not, where would that leave us at mid-year? Would we be scrambling again to make up a $5 million difference?
Council member, I think if we are looking at the notion of mid-year, any resources that would pay back the liquidity reserve or fund projects that were not able to be funded in the capital list would come from the year-end close from FY20. I think that we need to be very careful about what we do for our 21 budget and not eat into any additional resources in the current year budget, but that we hope and believe that there will be some resources available at the FY20 close. We have, as the report indicates, a little bit better results in our sales tax, although we did have a significant amount of unbudgeted expenditures associated with civil unrest in our community. We were also able to take advantage of the CARES Act funding on citywide operations to recover for some employee services costs that were above the $1 million we had anticipated in getting back in. So we're feeling hopeful, but it will all remains to be seen as we finish closing our book.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor, can I just add one thing to that answer? I'm sorry, then I'll turn it right back to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Couple things. Number one, it does make the next discussion we are having on the vacancy issue, again, highly relevant. And secondly, I remain hopeful that there is going to be another federal package here. If you're reading all that I'm reading, I know everyone reads, they are far from being there, and it may not happen until after the election. It may happen prior to the election, but there's now an acknowledgement, even from the Republican side, that some significant level of state and local funding would be part of a final package, you know, all off the record and on background. But we have to remain confident in terms of our, as you say, bidding on the come, that there is going to be either now or next month or the month after or in January, significant federal stimulus package, which gives me a little bit more comfort about following through in the way we're following through here.
Well, thanks, Mayor. I appreciate that comment. And yeah, you know, this is not an extraordinary sum that we're talking about here. And these projects have been on the books for a while. We already have waited more than 6 months on implementation. You know, one of the good news pictures here is that real estate taxes look like they will hold and maybe even increase. Unfortunately, actually, that, you know, there's so much pressure on our real estate market, the prices are climbing as we speak. I've seen some extraordinary sales lately, so that means more tax. That does not look like it's going to imminently collapse, but I'm always worried about it because we could be ending up in a real estate bubble. It's entirely possible. So we need to keep our eye on that. You know, I'm comfortable with these changes, but yeah, as much as I like to be optimistic, I also like to be realistic and be ready for what looks like could be coming. You know, I'm not a perma bear by any means, but real estate is highly inflated, and I think it's something we need to keep our eye on. So thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Rick Jennings.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate all the work that you and the city manager and the entire staff has done to get us to this point. As you mentioned before, our CIP is the only one that is outside of the adoption that we have in front of us. And with a commitment, I'm hearing very strongly to come back and fund the project, which I know I have your full commitment on, as well as the city of Sacramento's full commitment. And if not, I'm going to have about 80,000 residents that are going to be knocking on my door. So my block will be definitely the block of choice for a long-term time. People are excited about this project and they want to see it happen. They've waited a long time, as you know, 45 years for it to happen. And so there's a lot of excitement. There was an article in the paper over this past Inside publication. And so the neighbors who are walking the street getting exercise are knocking by the door to say, hey, this is finally going to happen. And they're resolved in knowing that it's going to happen. So the only thing I want to say is that, and I think I mentioned this in our conversation, in order to continue the work that we're doing right now, there may be a small amount that we're going to need to keep the work going as it relates to environmental reviews, the design and the permitting processes. And so that's a little bit more than $500,000 if my numbers are correct. And we'll get the exact numbers so that we can see that. And so of the total amount, the 4.4 or 4.7 total amount, approximately $500,000 is going to be needed to keep up the work that we've already started. So I just want to make sure that that's on the table so that we have full transparency for everyone here.
Well, can I just respond that, you know, again, if you look at the sheet, there's $857,000 to the good. And if over the next couple of weeks, you and the staff determine that you need that $500,000 to go forward, I would certainly support that strongly, because we don't want the project to lose any of its momentum and steam. We just know that for a variety of reasons, legal and otherwise, the actual $4.5 million isn't ready to be spent. But if you need some portion of that, I certainly would support that. Let's just work it out with the manager and my team, and we'll figure out what is needed.
Well, we are good team players, and we know that everybody's working to make Sacramento a better place. And we believe this project fits right in there with making Sacramento a destination, continue to be a destination for many years to come. So I'll make sure to get the exact numbers for you and when those dollars are needed to you and the city manager, and make sure my colleagues are aware of that as well, so they can see what's going on in District 7.
Thank you, as always, for looking out for your district first and ferociously as you do, but also looking out for the entire city. Appreciate it very, very much. Councilmember Guerra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Manager, for putting together a proposal here, finding a way to ensure that we keep some of these projects going, and also being thoughtful and prudent about the current financial state of our situation. I know some of these projects are critical. I know particularly one that would have already been constructed at this point by now, but for COVID starting in March, was the improvements, much needed improvements to the Tahoe Talek Little League field. I think, Mr. Mayor, you had a hand a little bit in that, in rededicating them back in the 90s when you were a council member. I had a conversation with Mr. Don Terrell, who's lived on Maida Circle for 52 years and was a coach when he first moved to Sacramento with his kids, and they signed that first lease of those Little League fields, and they haven't had much improvement in those two iterations since the rededication in the 90s. And it's a community that is very diverse, with little means, and I know that this would mean a lot to them to make sure that we fulfill this, at the same time being thoughtful and prudent about how we balance this given our upcoming budget. So I think this is a good approach of hitting a lot of areas, and also thinking about, you know, what our true numbers look like when the tax numbers come in, and making those decisions when we see those tax numbers come in.
Well, I remember that rededication because I had more hair and a mustache. That's what I remember from the 90s. It's a great community, and those ball fields, man, so many generations of kids have had great experiences there, and they deserve everything you're delivering to them, Councilmember Guetta, so thank you. Okay, Councilman Chenier.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of points, and I do want to address the free bus passes, and I appreciate the credit on this, but I think there's a couple of important things on this. First of all, it's clearly been successful in supporting young people and their families across the city. It's made a difference, and we get far more out of it than the 750,000 or even $1 million that we put in. Also, I want to emphasize, Mr. Hansen said this is not just about getting to school, but it's about getting to work. It's about doing what young people need to do on weekends or want to do on weekends, but it's also about climate. It's also about creating lifelong public transit riders, and the continuity of supporting young people to ride the bus and ride light rail is extremely important. When we provided direction, let me say also, I think this is the 4th or 5th time now that this item has come up before council in one form or another. It's a relatively small amount of money given our budget, $1 million or less. And again, we spend an exorbitant amount of time on it, and the delay in implementing it has really been difficult because we've missed opportunities, even with COVID, to use the times when young people are in school or on the day that they registered or the first day when they did come to provide the passes. So that's been a little bit more difficult. I'm very appreciative that we have the money. Again, I think it's really important to continue doing this. When we provided direction to the city manager to find the $1 million, part of the direction also was that this become part of our base ongoing. And so I want to make sure that that continues so that next year we're not spending the same amount of time, again, on a relatively small amount of money, and that this becomes part of the general fund base as we move forward.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just one final comment.
Yeah.
I'd like to congratulate Jay on what I think is an inspired idea. This free bus pass has been very successful, and all of the good points that he mentioned, especially, climate and creating lifelong transit riders. I think that he really stumbled onto something great here. So, Jay, I just wanted to say thank you.
I appreciate that.
Agreed. Absolutely. I mean, again, I don't want to, there's no gloating here because we know that there are still challenging times ahead, undoubtedly. But I do think if you want to stop for just 30 seconds and feel good about something, it's the fact that in the midst of a pandemic, yes, with declining revenues, we were able to invest $80 million in the community through CARES. We're able to be creative and responsible with our general fund to follow through on commitments around important capital improvement projects, including those which meet that definition of inclusion, to fund these additional services for young people, and to stand up what I think will be a pillar of reform when it comes to the issues roiling our community and our country around public safety, and doing it all without having to reduce basic services or lay people off. That's pretty good. And yes, we're going to confront new challenges, and we will be up to it, just as we have been over these last couple of months. So this is not a vote, but it is I think the direction is pretty clear. Lainey wants to follow up. Go ahead.
I'd like to summarize. We will move forward with reports to reflect the revised chart that had been up on the screen for a while, as well as commitments at mid-year for the restoration of the Golden One Center liquidity reserves that we are spending in order to get where we are today, as well as the funding of the District 7 Bike Trail project and potential restoration of funding for the Office of Community Response that we had to reduce in order to get where we are. And so you will see those council reports come through as we lead up to the midyear.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask one additional question?
Sure.
And then I have
Yeah.
one after Jay, please.
Go. Who's
Jay,
first?
you're on mute.
Jay?
I'm sorry. It's a combination of the CARES dollars and the general fund dollars. The 9 million or so that we are reimbursing the general fund out of CARES, where is that marked?
It is not marked on this particular spreadsheet. It is part of the year-end process. In fact, we're just doing all the finalization of running the reports and processing all of the proper accounting to get it recorded. So we don't know yet how much to the good with the other additional spending that departments had around community unrest. We don't know the net of all of that yet. What we had in the adopted budget and an expectation of $1 million, and we know will exceed that. He's given us authority for 9. It will come though over 2 fiscal years, some in the year that just closed and some in the current year, depending on when the expense was incurred.
Okay, but we'll see that as you guys figure it out.
You will. In fact, we have a federal reporting requirement of expenditures through June 30 that we are working on. It's due in the next couple of weeks, and we can certainly share that with council, and you'll be able to see exactly what we've spent in that category.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. All right. Let's now
Mayor, I
move
have
on.
one last question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve. Go
Sorry.
ahead. Apologies.
This is for the city manager. Mr. City Manager, I know that we passed a motion at council in May, I believe it was, to unfreeze some of the CIPs we were talking about today. Do you need further direction through council action to proceed with these community and parks projects so that there's no doubt about our ability to move forward, or do you have sufficient authority to do so?
No, I have sufficient authority. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Moving forward. All right. Now let's move to another important item, another potential opportunity, and that is the citywide vacancies update.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As you know, on May 12th, 2020, as part of the fiscal year 2021 proposed budget presentation, Council was provided a breakdown of citywide vacancies that existed as of April 11th of 2020. And the report that was given to you in April, on page 1, you will see that those were the vacancies at the time, page 2, image 1. Around the same time, a temporary hiring freeze was implemented due to the projected economic impacts and revenue loss from COVID-19 pandemic. Council requested that staff return with additional information on the identified vacancies and the effects on programs and services if these positions are left unfilled. On May 26, 2020, the Youth Parks and Community Enrichment Department provided an update on 199 of those positions identified, as well as an update on the department's efforts to modifying programming to reflect the shelter-in-place orders. As you can see on page 3, image 2 of the report, it shows the updated vacancy count as of July 15th of 2020. Outside of parks, there are currently 223 vacancies, 73 which are outside of parks, 150 which are still parks. Detailed information for the remaining 73 vacant FTEs, which totals $6.7 million in general fund budgeted dollars, is provided on the next several pages. And I just want to remind everyone that of the 6.7 million, 3.6 million in general fund is already included in the adopted budget as an assumption on vacancy savings, which I believe we do annually, and 5.5 million being included in all funds citywide. I do have staff on the meeting for each department to discuss their particular vacancies, and we can go in order of the report. But before they start, I do want to make a couple of points. Just to remind everyone that the vacancies that we're discussing tonight, it includes only vacancies where there is no offset or where there are no savings could be realized by holding the positions vacant. And just a note that there are always rolling vacancies in the city due to turnover. None of the positions are vacant long-term. The departments may choose to hold vacancies a little longer on occasion in order to pay for things that are not in the department's budget, such as, but definitely not limited to, training, computer equipment, other supplies and services. Since we're going in order of the report, the city clerk will be first. And if all other staff could stay tuned, and please make sure you're ready to speak in the proper order of the report. And city clerk, I'll hand it over to you.
Does the council have any questions for the city clerk's department?
So what the idea here is, why is to go through every department here and hear about every position?
Would you prefer that, or would you rather ask questions of certain departments?
I was just going to suggest that if the council would like to, they can ask questions about specific departments, and we can start there and then fill in the gaps.
Okay, why don't we start with council questions? We don't have callers. So I'm going to start here because I want to, again, if I might kind of frame this. So there was $15 million worth of unfilled vacancies. And now accounting for some of what we have committed to, including some of the youth programming, the number is now down to just over $11 million. As we have just seen, and as we see every time we try to reconcile the priorities, the commitments, the aspirations with the realities of our city budget, $11 million is a lot of money. And I've had this conversation with the city manager, and as you know, we work great together. We've had this, but we've had a spirited conversation about the following, and with the departments. Why is it the burden of the 9 policymakers up here to have to go through every single one of these positions, hear a pretty compelling answer, undoubtedly, from all the department heads about why their single or 2 or 5 positions are so important, only to be left with then, well, we probably can't do anything, versus saying we are going to at least temporarily put, say, $5 million of that $11 million into an escrow account that ought to be available for our community priorities, and/or the city manager, any of the departments can come back and make the case for why that position is more important than being able to follow through on participatory budgeting, for example, or any of the other things that we seem to have a hard time being able to get to. That's my problem with the process, if you will, over this vacant position thing, because we could spend 3 hours here going through all of it, and every single position would in some ways be justified, and I'm sure they are. But this is a matter of priority. We're going to hear from the Measure U Advisory Committee in a few moments. Regardless of what number we might want to or agree to, we're starting from 0 here when it comes to participatory budgeting. Where are we going to get the money? And we've already committed that the first call on any of the mid-year surplus, which we hope will exist, are going to go to fulfill Councilmember Jennings' rightful priority. We've got to deal with the liquidity fund with parking. So I want to do this vacancy thing differently. In fact, I want to put this on the table. I want to say that we are going to temporarily take $5 million out of this 11. That still leaves $6 million to deal with overtimes and other needs throughout the organization. $5 million. And then I want the council, together with the city management, to define those priorities. My priority out of that $5 million is going to be kickstarting participatory budgeting. That's what I want to do, because I think that is a vital part of reconnecting with our community and helping us to identify community priorities. But regardless of whether you agree with me or not, I say we take the $5 million now and put it aside so that when we get to mid-year, it is for us to weigh whether or not to fulfill or fund these vacant positions. Remember, this is all one time as well, because we're talking about 1 year at a time, or whether or not we put that $5 million into something else. Let me tell you something else that bothers me a little bit about this process and the way we have to go about this. We're sitting here on September what is today, the 7th? We are already a couple months into the fiscal year. I have no idea, reading this report, for example, even if we were to keep all of these positions funded now for the city organization, when those positions are actually going to be filled. And why it is the analysis that comes to us does not even account for the fact that many of them on the natural might not be filled until April, May, or even June, and there's savings there. Yet we never get to realize those savings to, again, assess the priorities of how we could spend that amount of money versus eventually filling the position. So that's what I want to put on the table. Again, this is not a vote, but it's a direction piece. And I'd like to see whether or not folks say, hey, let's put $5 million. We're not saying how we're going to spend it. I've laid down my marker. I'd like to spend it on participatory budgeting, but at least put that in a informal escrow account so that we are then deciding and debating how to proceed instead of going through department by department and hearing, and I'm sure there'll all be good cases about why every single one of these vacant positions is needed for the organization. Well, guess what? The community needs a lot of things too. We've got to weigh it because that's our job. Mr. City Manager?
So in the spirit of having a spirited conversation about this, I just want to make sure that, you know, the numbers that Shelley went through are clear. The updated list that we have that shows this $11.3 million value to 223 FTEs. You know, a portion of those, 150 to be exact, 150.94 are related to youth parks and community enrichment. They're reflected in here just so that we can have the comparison from what we showed council previously. Those, we're moving forward with those recruitments. So that $4.6 million for the youth department is already going to be, we're going to take it off the $11 million.
Okay.
So there's that piece. And then
I only asked for 5.
and then the other piece about vacancies that are not filled and those resources. Some of those vacancies and those savings and the resources from those vacancies are used to fund other programs that we otherwise would come forward to the council to ask for permission to spend. So we've kind of lived within our means that way. But I think it's a good conversation to have. And if 5 million is the number, I plan to come back and share with the council what are some of those implications, just so that everybody's clear on what they are.
Fair enough.
Okay.
But at least that's an affirmative debate and discussion as opposed to us having to parse through every one of these now and decide how much money we might want to set aside in escrow.
Agreed.
And,
okay. So,
Mayor and City Manager, if I may say one more thing in addition, is that we've already set aside $3.6 million to close the budget loop for this year.
but that's out of the 15.
That's correct. That was the placeholder that we had earlier in the year.
That's out of the 15 million.
Right.
Okay, so we're down to 11 now, having accounted for that. What the city manager just said is that out of the 11, there was already commitments on the 4-6 on the youth side. That leaves then well over, that leaves.
But there's also recruitments that are occurring. That's why we want to.
Okay, I know. That leaves about $6.5 million. And there are some existing recruitments. I get all that. I'm just saying $5 million I would like escrowed. Again, this isn't laying anybody off. This isn't reducing services unless Howard tells us otherwise when he comes back.
Yep.
But the burden ought to be different here. That ought to be shifted as opposed to, because I can't say no to any of these individually.
Do we have that on record?
No, but I mean, we'd sit here, we wouldn't know how to do it, but I could if we get into that conversation in a better way. Okay, let's hear from members.
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. Jay Chenier was first, I think. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. So I just want to agree with you on this piece. I mean, this has been a pretty frustrating experience, starting with the report that we got from our consultant and then coming down to where we are today. I mean, I know that staff has put a lot of time into this item. So Shelley, thank you for doing that and writing the justifications, which I assume was a citywide kind of fire drill to appease the council on this. But what I found lacking to some degree in the justifications really was, you know, how are these duties being filled now, if at all? So that we can understand that. I think that's really important. And, you know, there was a lot of justification. If we don't get this money, we can't do X. But have we not been doing X? And this is, you know, I'm going to credit Larry Carr on a lot of this because this is all around priorities and saying, you know, to our staff, as you said, Mr. Mayor, this is what's important and should be the priority for that money. So I would ask that as you come back and potentially as we do this next year, which I hope we don't have to go through the same exercise, but if we do, really to provide for us an understanding of what's happening on the ground. Now, I also understand, and maybe this is a question for Shelley or Laney, you know, every year I've been on the council, we've had a pretty good surplus at mid-year and at the end of the year. I'm assuming that a good chunk of that surplus is from these positions. I don't know if that's a Howard question or a Laney question, but as we think about mid-year and the surplus that we generally have, we're going to exhaust that in this way.
Yeah, generally, if over the past couple of mid-years, the excess resources have been the result of revenues above budget as we grew back from the recession. And vacancies have provided some funding that we were able to transfer to fund our other post-employment benefit obligations and liabilities, but generally they are not the bulk of our mid-year results. And just to clarify, Shelley was correct. The city budget included a salary savings, and these same vacancies are the positions, or as they change and positions are filled and new positions are vacated, that also have to fulfill that $3.6 million salary savings requirement for departments. So they may have been leaving positions vacant in order to fulfill that requirement, and now that position will be swept. So they will rely potentially on future vacancies to fulfill those requirements. And council members, what I do know is that departments are utilizing people either out of class or doing jobs that they don't normally do, or doing lots more of the jobs they do in order to account for the fact that positions have gone unfilled. So we are asking our staff to, I hate this term, to do more with less. And as the city manager pointed out, there are things that will go undone because we don't have the right people to fulfill those particular obligations, or we are unable to because of requirements and how people work, to ask people to step in and do that. And that will have to be how we manage it through those services that will be unable to perform differently. And we will share that with council as well.
Okay, and do we have, and this kind of goes hand in hand with us, I think, my understanding from some of the discussions we've had in the past on this, particularly with police or police and fire, is that these funds in vacancies in those departments many of the funds were used for overtime or to pay overtime. And that we actually...
Correct. And in fact, this analysis nets out the sworn, so that if they have vacancies, they will still have that flexibility to do so. I believe we were at a place in the police department where they were coming upon a once in a lifetime moment of being close to being filled. I do know that was when we presented in May. I don't know where we are right now, as well as the fire department finishing an academy, but there are always additional vacancies. And because fire has required staffing levels, and we are demanding of our police department to be responsive, there will be overtime that we will need to pay for.
Right, so my request, and I think I made this, if I have any memory at all, last time we had this discussion, because my memory, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that in the budget, police overtime was budgeted at $2 to $3 million, but came in at in 10 to 11 million dollars, something around those numbers.
Yeah, that
And
was,
so my request, hang on, Lainey. My request is that as we move forward into next year's budget, that we realistically estimate overtime based on our historical experience, like we do everything else, and that we don't purposely under budget it, so that when we have these discussions during the year, if we do, we have a better sense of what the vacancies may yield in dollars that won't be spoken for through those two department budgets. I think it's just, it's not a good way of budgeting, because we're just fooling ourselves and moving money around rather than presenting a true picture of where we're going to be.
and we can certainly make an attempt to right size our overtime budgets. We had a time period where we had given substantial raises and the overtime budgets had not kept pace with that. And also there is always the theory and practice that we would like to have the positions filled and not have to reallocate. That would mean that either we are augmenting budgets or we are reallocating dollars meant for full-time FTE to an overtime budget. So there will be a balance there. I also think a lot of folks have gotten deep into the management partners report, had some budgets to actuals, and I think the biggest change was in the fire department. And unfortunately, that report did not discreetly report the overtime associated with our USAR strike teams, which is fully refundable and part of the mutual aid that we're experiencing right now. So if ever we do another report like that, I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that that information is separated out so that we don't make judgments about budget to actuals that don't really reflect the work that was being done and the reimbursements for that.
I understand that. I just want us to be transparent, both within the council and as we make policy decisions, and for the community itself when we do our budget for next year. So I would expect to see it a little bit differently. And this has been an extraordinary year. There's no question about it. And the amount of scared to death to look at the overtime budgets that we've had over the last couple of months here. But I think we need to be realistic about it. And I don't think we have been, or it's been a little bit of a robbing Peter to pay Paul, or shell game, whatever you want to say. It's just not the way to budget. So thank you.
Councilor Schneer, if I may. Absolutely, you did request that, and that will be part of our budgeting process as we come forward to the council. One of the things that Lainey did not hit on is that we are beginning to fill some of our vacancies within the police department. Whereas in the past, we were able to fund overtime out of those vacancies, we are starting to fill those up, and those opportunities to backfill the overtime have gone away. And so you're right, we need to true up the budget and call overtime what it is, and then set the staffing level at what the council expects the staffing levels to be, given the calls for service on the police department. So yeah, that will be part of our process. You'll see a pretty dramatic change in the line items within the police budget. I think overall though, you'll see the bottom line is fairly similar to where we're at. And then that's the basis from which we can have that conversation.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, this is Alan. Can I just quickly comment?
Of course.
Well, I just also wanted to just support Jay's assessment and comments. I've had similar discussions with Lainey and, and staff about how we do our budgeting. And I think oftentimes we are intentionally underestimating revenue, particularly when, prior to COVID. And Jay's been here longer than I have, but every year since I've been here, we've had budget surplus at mid-year as well. And I've often questioned that because I think it doesn't allow us to accurately reflect and to prioritize, things that we'd like to do in the city. I do understand being, a bit conservative, but I think we have made a habit of it. And, it is not, I think, generally the conservative nature. I think some of it is actually by design. And so I think Jay's comments are right on point.
So I want to clarify one thing before I get to Councilmember Carr, because it's an important factual piece. So clarify with the city manager. The $11 million we're talking about here in terms of vacancies do not include sworn law enforcement or sworn fire positions, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're not talking about that. So anyone who, could go both ways. But anyone from the public safety side who is concerned that we are freezing $5 million worth of those positions, that's not what this is. The $11 million includes police and fire, but on the non-sworn side. And I think that is important factually for everybody to know. Okay, Council Member, Vice Mayor, I don't know who was next, I'm sorry. Harris, Vice Mayor Harris, go ahead.
I'd like to speak after Jeff.
You know,
Okay.
actually, Mayor, I think Larry was set to go first. I'll go after Larry.
Okay, I'm good. One thing I will guarantee is that every member will speak more than once. Go ahead, Councilmember Carr.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, first, thank you for suggesting an alternative approach to this. I was really lamenting the fact that we were going to try to go through each line in each one of these departments and determine how we were going to fund them or whether or not we would fund them. If it's $5 million we're looking for, I think it's probably doable. But I do think those people who report directly to the council, the city clerk, the city treasurer, and the auditor, I think it is our duty to go through those line by line. They don't report to the city manager, they report to us, and we are their direct supervisor. So I think they need to justify those positions to the council as a whole. And I would also say that we also need to look at the positions in the mayor and council offices. We can generate some savings there as well. But rather than just focus on the vacancies, we have a $1.4, $1.2 billion budget. Why don't we just ask the city manager to come up with how he's going to save us the $5 million that we're looking for in the next budget, rather than have him come back to tell us he's going to eliminate a position in Public Works or a position in YPSI that will mean we'll have the grass not cut as often. Let's direct him to save $5 million in the next budget. He can take it out of vacancies. He can take it out of attrition. He can take it out of overtime. He can take it anywhere that he wants to take it, as long as he fulfills the mission that we've given him, and that is to provide a safe, clean city with recreational activities, etc. So rather than confine him just to this aspect of the budget, let's direct the city manager to provide us $5 million in savings, and you can put that in the bank right now. And then when he puts his budget together, he would do it in a way that will allow him to solve the problems of the city as he sees fit, as long as he saves us that $5 million that we're looking for. And then we as a council look at those offices that report directly to the council and do not report to the city manager. That would be my suggestion, Mayor.
Well, I get your point, respected, of course, if only it were so. Look, this is direction. It's not a motion, but this is direction. And I think it helps the city manager, and he can speak for himself, of course, as he is dealing with the various competing, sometimes parts of the organization, to actually provide some specific direction about where he might find the money. Now, he could come back and say, I found a better way, and that would be okay. But I do think for us to get involved, at least in some level of detail, actually helps, because to provide that direction gives him, I think, more ability to actually find the money. And so I'm not comfortable with just the generalized, these are the outcomes we want, you go do it. We are the electeds, we've had this discussion a lot, I know, who are ultimately accountable to the people. And so we have to, we're not micromanaging. That's why I don't want to go through 13 different reports and adjudicate every position.
And so, may I?
Yeah.
I think Councilmember Carr's suggestion is a good one as well. Maybe we can do it hybrid. If I cannot get to the 5 million number through the vacancies piece, I will come up with some options for the council to consider. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, that's right. There may be other options, so it may include,
And that's all I'm suggesting there, that there may be other ways to approach this. Still get the money that you want for these other projects, but optimize it, do it in a way that best serves the city. And it may not be in these particular categories. But I still think that we need to look at the city clerk, all the officers that report to the city council, we need to look at those as a whole. And if the city manager can come up with a better way to do it, I'm all for that.
Okay. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, Larry laid out a policy governance approach to dealing with this. In essence, asking our city manager to do our policy bidding and then figure out a way to do it and come back to us with what the results might be. You know, I have to say that every time we allocate money to something other than core city services, some of those services fail or are lessened. For instance, we have a great need for code enforcement officers. I think everybody on this council would agree with me, maybe not, but we consistently fall short in some of the services that we provide to our constituents. And that is one thing that I would call out consistently, that our code enforcement department is just simply overworked and they don't have enough employees to do the job that we would like them to do to provide the service to our constituents that they expect. You know, we can talk about trying to set aside $5 million for participatory budgeting, but I think that's the wrong discussion. I've agreed with Larry for a long time that the discussion we need to have is what services do we need to provide to our constituents and allocate the money for that, see what's left over, and see where we can go from there. You know, we kind of hunt and pick and choose on these various issues, but we still have a lot of needs. As far as overtime goes, I have a question for the city manager. Howard, how much money in overtime are we going to have to come up with for the police to deal with the protests we've been managing of late?
You know, I don't have the exact number, but it's in the $3 to $4 million range as I sit here. Lainey, do you have a more updated number?
The question was costs around the protests.
Yes. Police
I
overtime.
believe 3 to 4 million is accurate, which is why I say that our ability to achieve reimbursements from federal dollars may just help us get to even around the increased cost of protests.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is running a city is a fluid movement and you don't really know what's coming. When we ask Lainey to prognosticate in a budget, you know, what revenues will be and what expenditures will be, it's an educated guess, but it's a guess. And we are in absolutely extraordinary times with COVID and with these protests, none of which we could have foreseen. And yet they are true costs to the city, very, very real and substantial costs. So while we haggle over $5 million here or there, in the bigger picture, what that tells me is that we're in a very skinny place where we're talking about not filling city vacancies because we want to do these other projects. Well, that's a fair discussion to have. What are our priorities? We should always be having that discussion. But I think it's absolutely unfair to say to Lainey that, you know, she's hiding the pea or playing a shell game. I mean, she's trying to be reasonably conservative with our budget and leave us a little bit of money to have at mid-year, which is a great thing because then we know what we've got and we can decide to spend it. But these are small sums of money. I would just say that we still have a lot of unmet needs in the city in terms of service provision. And, you know, as far as participatory budgeting, I guess we'll have that discussion in a minute, but it was never promised in Measure U in the ballot language. And, you know, it's kind of a new concept, quite frankly. So trying to, you know, put an extra burden on city employees to do more work with fewer people to create this new opportunity, to me, doesn't make sense. but that argument is in the upcoming item. Thank you.
I'd like to respond to Councilmember Harris.
I do have other members, but but go ahead, Councilmember Carr, then I'll turn it over to Councilmember Chenier and anyone else.
Yeah, I don't ramble on, so it'll be short. The reason I agree with the mayor on the 5 million, Jeff, is because I don't want to disagree with him on everything all the time. And if he wanted 5 million, just let him do that. I do think we do have a mechanism in place already that does what some of the groups are asking for, and that is the audit that the city auditor does, where he compares what our constituents want with what other constituents want across the board. It's a scientifically defensible audit, so it's correct. We know when we look at it what our citizens feel that is lacking, and we know where we should be putting our priorities. But somehow we don't get around to making the budget address where we know our citizens are. So the 5 million thing is not much. I just didn't want to keep disagreeing with the mayor all the time. Thank you, Mayor.
I'm going to miss it. I will tell you. Okay, Councilman Chenier.
It's how we keep him sharp.
Exactly.
Thanks. Yeah, I just want to say, I wasn't saying Laney was trying to hide money, but I think the process doesn't work. And what's happened, and this past year was an exception, and thankfully we didn't spend it all at mid-year last time around. But what happens is when we don't do the estimates and we're not realistic about it, and then we have 10, 12, 15 million left over at mid-year, it becomes a little bit, or it has become a little bit of a free-for-all. And we're not comparing how we spend those dollars with how we spend dollars in the budget as a whole. So that was my point on that. I think we can be more realistic about it. And I think we're a little bit backwards on this 5 million, with all respect, that, we haven't had the discussion about whether the council wants to go there. 5 million has been, Mr. Mayor, a kind of arbitrary number. I don't know what the basis is for that. And so I would say if the council, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that the basis is essentially this. I backed from 15 million to 11 million, from 11 million to the 4.5 or so that has already been committed to the youth, parks, and community services. And then that leaves then 6.5 million. And then an estimate of $1.5 million for other things that come up in terms of ongoing recruitments, et cetera. But there's no evidence in any of these in the reports that all of these positions are actually going to be filled even by June the 30th. So yes, it's a little bit random, but it's not totally random, because it's sort of basing it off the $11 million. And it's just a number. And again, what I suggest is we sort of put it in escrow. Again, I understand other members may have a different idea than I do about participatory budgeting or anything else, but I want to be able to have that discussion about at least that amount of money that we can talk about, instead of having to go through 13 reports and decide which position right now is warranted versus or needed versus another position.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I don't think we have the knowledge base to make those decisions in any case, nor should we be. I mean, I think this goes back to what are we trying to achieve here. All right, well, we'll see what we come up with. But I think how we spend funds that are a result of the vacancies is a discussion for the council, obviously. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Yes, Mayor.
Who was that? I'm sorry.
Councilmember Hanson.
Yes, Steve, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. I raised my hand because I was trying to figure out how Councilmember Chenier and Councilmember Ashby, when they joined, felt about layoffs, because they've talked about it a lot, and they were the only members left who had to really face what was a horrible situation during the Great Recession. And earlier this year, the council moved to freeze positions and hiring that were non-essential for the reason of one, we wanted to preserve capital. So we could retain flexibility in facing COVID or whatever other challenges have come up. And certainly we've been challenged during this last 6 months in many different ways. And then secondly, I think what I've heard them both say is that one of the worst things they've ever had to do was lay people off from the city. And Councilmember Schneer, I know you're here and listening, and those are lessons I've learned from both of you during my time here and watched very difficult votes happen. And I think while we're talking about the savings from not hiring, I think we've also we need to keep in mind this issue of what's going to happen in the future is not yet known. Obviously, we're hoping for the best, but we have to plan for a situation where it doesn't work out like we hope. And one of the best ways we can control costs is by not hiring. The city personnel have grown substantially since 2012 when I joined the council. We have, I think, now exceeded, at least in the number of positions, the high water mark that was reached in 2007. It might have been the 2007-8 budget year. And so we have restored services in keeping with our promises under Measure U and a variety of other efforts that we've done. But obviously costs have gone up, things have changed. Our PERS obligation is eating substantial amounts of money out of the base budget every year. And that wasn't something when the first Measure U was adopted that we knew about. But what's not on the table here is that, you know, the pension and healthcare obligations to each of these employees is substantial. And it's just one of the things that is eating away at our ability to provide core city services. And we're in a 20 to 30 year arc of working through that underfunded set of pensions and the OPEB liabilities, the post-employment benefit liabilities that we're all very aware of. So as much as we are talking about what Councilmember Harris said is a relatively small amount of money, I think the consequences of hiring, given the potential austerity in the future, it's just prudent for us to continue to hold back as much as filling essential key positions, but not filling ones that will set us up to have other shortfalls later where we have to further take away from our efforts around helping disadvantaged communities, working on homelessness, or any of the other many things that the public has asked us to do that are above and beyond the basic core city services, which we're also fiduciaries for. So I think it's a very important conversation. And I agree with Councilmember Schneer that this really is something overall that the base budget, which we passed, probably should have contemplated better. But none of us are perfect, and obviously we can't foretell the future. But as we look to the next budget year, I think this is an important one to continue to keep flexibility on, whether it's to meet the needs of another crisis that could develop, or whether it's just to preserve our basic flexibility. Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, City Manager. Thanks, everyone, for this very important.
There's nothing else on this item. Thank you. Let us now move to the Measure U Advisory Committee recommendations. And is Chairwoman Kofer, Dr. Kofer, on the line?
I am.
Welcome to you. How would you like to proceed? Do you have one or two presenters? And
we do have two presenters, and I think I'm going to just kind of introduce and set the stage, and then I'll turn it over to my two colleagues.
Okay, Dr. Kofer, it's a little hard to hear.
Okay, let me see if I can make sure that. Is that better?
That's better. Yeah,
Okay.
that is better. Okay, well, welcome to you. I thank you and your fellow commission members for the many hours that you have spent and worked in this very, very important area, and we look forward to hearing your recommendations.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Flojan Kofer, and I am the chair of the Measure U Community Advisory Committee. And today I'm joined by members who make up the Civic and Community Engagement Ad Hoc of our committee, and that's Deborah Odo-Kent, Dana Kivel, and Kathy Cresswell. And of course, as authorized by city ordinance passed by your body, our committee has been tasked with providing advice on expenditures related to the permanent 1 cent Measure U sales and use tax revenue. In the 15 months since our committee was formed, we have, through trial and error a bit, come up with a voice for our advisory role, and we've organized ourselves to perform what I would describe as 3 major functions. The first being identifying opportunities for the city to improve process and operate efficiently. The second is to provide budget oversight and transparency. And the third is to engage, amplify, and respond to community voices, specifically those most impacted when systems rooted in oppression operate as usual. And so together with my colleagues, we are offering 2 recommendations that we'd like the council to take action on, preferably before September 30th. Both of these recommendations were unanimously approved by the members present at the meetings when they were approved. And our first recommendation will likely be somewhat familiar because Marjorie Dickinson, another member of our committee, and I presented it to this body in February. And this recommendation is for annual funding allocated for participatory budgeting. For a bit of context, I invited the Participatory Budgeting Project to present at the Measure U Community Advisory Committee during our October meeting last year. And the Civic and Community Engagement Ad Hoc took up the task of researching exactly how this would work after the presentation, as well as how it could benefit the city of Sacramento. And they even applied to get free technical assistance to support our efforts. In a moment, you'll hear more from Deborah Odo-Kent about this process, but I just want to really give her some major credit for championing and leading these efforts over the last year. And then the second of our recommendations is for annual funding beginning this year to conduct population-based polling of Sacramentans to help the city develop its priorities and respond to the needs in the community. And this idea was the brainchild of Dana Kivel. Member Kivel had a conflicting obligation today, so she may or may not have been able to join us. If she hasn't been able to get on the Zoom, then member Kathy Cresswell will present this item. And so without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to member Deborah Odo-Kent.
Good afternoon. Thank you. As Chair Kofer of the Measure U Committee stated that our committee first learned about participatory budgeting when we had a presentation from the staff come and share their expertise with our committee. And participatory budgeting as a process has been around for over a decade and been implemented internationally in dozens and dozens of municipalities as well as throughout the country here. I think, from my perspective, we were all learning how to serve on the Measure U committee and kind of deepen our understanding about what our role was. And after the presentation in October and February, we continued to talk and learn about participatory budgeting. And from my perspective, it was one of the very, very early things that our committee unanimously agreed that is very aligned with the purpose and intent of Measure U spending allocations. So we, at that time, agreed to make some recommendations, forward them on to the City Council and the Mayor. As you know, we weren't convened again until June. We reaffirmed that commitment in June, and you all received another request for participatory budgeting in July. I think our interest in participatory budgeting was reinforced and heightened with increasing discussions around reimagining public safety. We learned that many, many cities throughout the country are having deep conversations around reimagining public safety and divesting and investing in what residents really see are important projects, priorities, and initiatives aligned with public safety. So as Chair Kofer mentioned, we applied to receive some free technical support. The Participatory Budgeting Organization was very excited to work with Sacramento in this opportunity. And our purpose really was to try to deepen our understanding about what is it, how does it work, what potential impact could it have, what have they learned from the dozens and dozens of cities and jurisdictions that have implemented participatory budgeting. We have reviewed and looked at dozens of evaluations and studies and outcomes and different metrics that cities have established in their early adoption of participatory budgeting. And, I think that we felt like participatory budgeting really aligned with priorities around inclusion and equity and engaging a more diverse set of residents that often are not deeply engaged in the process of setting budget priorities or connecting with elected officials or making resident recommendations, and that for many, probably most of the cities, that is the primary purpose of participatory budgeting, to hear from folks who normally don't come around the table to provide recommendations around where they'd really like to see allocations of public resources. So just briefly, what is participatory budgeting? It's been used to describe a wide range of activities to engage residents. And I think as another council member suggested earlier, is that in fact the city does have a variety of mechanisms to engage folks and residents that are ongoing. So what makes participatory budgeting different? I think it is kind of the widely adopted definition is that it's a process of involving decision making regarding distribution of public funds. It clearly articulates the public participation goals as opposed to promises of public engagement. It aims and implements a spectrum of activities and strategies to inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and ultimately empower residents to make decisions and recommendations to policymakers, if you will, that are binding. And I think the outcomes, what we learned from these various studies, is that people feel like they are truly being listened to, and that some of their recommendations can visibly be seen, and they connect with them as something that I said and I asked for, and I see it in my own neighborhood and community. Again, we think participatory budgeting as a strategy and approach clearly prioritizes equity, inclusion, and a high priority of disadvantaged community, neighborhood, and residents. This has been documented over and over again in the various evaluations and studies that have been done, increase greater numbers of participation of racial and ethnic groups, socioeconomic diversity, inclusion, geographic distribution of neighborhoods who perhaps may have lower rates of engagement. There had been documentation of changes in how residents after participatory budgeting view government in terms of transparency. Residents have an improved understanding of the complexity of the kinds of issues that bodies legislators have to deal with and understanding, including the budgetary processes. There's been increases in positive attitudes about council members, such as all of yourself, about policy making in general, and reported in one community, 2/3 of participants reported more confidence, greater respect, and appreciation for the hard work that you all are doing and the kinds of deliberations and thinking that needs to go into making fiscal recommendations and decisions. Another interesting, thing that we learned was that many of the cities and jurisdictions, participants support higher tax initiatives or raising taxes in those cities. And in fact, many of them do collect higher taxes from residents, and there is higher support for those kinds of initiatives. I think, as I mentioned earlier at our June meeting, we really circled back to participatory budgeting because many of the cities in our country now are dealing with issues around public safety, and participatory budgeting is a process that's being adopted in parallel with discussions around both divesting but investing into communities aligned with public safety efforts that communities are driving. Some of those cities include Minneapolis, New York, Phoenix, Seattle, around not just around public safety, but around housing and other issues. So as Chair Kofer mentioned, our request is for a specific allocation in this budget for participatory budgeting, and aligned with that, a recommendation around polling. We're aware that there's other initiatives going around and discussions that are happening with various groups around more inclusive budgeting, prioritizing, and decision-making processes. And we really believe that participatory budgeting and polling is really aligns with those efforts and would not compete with those initiatives. And if I could just, I want to just speak to council members or Vice Mayor Harris's question about what services do we need to allocate for constituents? What are those needs? I think that is at the heart of participatory budgeting, is to connect and to continue to feel, I mean, it is to have a robust process where residents who live in neighborhoods who normally don't log on to these meetings or show up at council meetings are driving the discussions around what their needs are and what will resonate and what are the services at various points in time would really make a difference in their daily lives. And participatory budgeting isn't new to this country. It certainly isn't new internationally. One example is New York City adopted participatory budgeting in 2011 with an initial allocation of $4 million. It is now up to $30 million. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Member Creswell.
Great. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. We wanted to also make a request today about polling. And this polling is really designed to support our work on Measure U, so that as much as our commission is designed to reflect the community, and our jobs on the committee are to ensure that we're hearing from folks and reflect those interests, we really determined that we really need a more inclusive process for us to be able to really serve that role of representing community voice. And so we are looking to have the council support an annual Measure U polling. We do see it as a companion to participatory budgeting. It will reach a lot more people and enable us to really understand from each of the various communities what their needs are, how they see their needs being met or not being met. And we ultimately think it might be a process that combines with the people's budgeting process, which is also currently underway. But the data that we get from it and understanding what the needs are in communities will be used to both help our assessment of what needs and how we should be allocating Measure U funds, but also will really be informative in the participatory budgeting process. So we are looking for the council to allocate and the mayor to allocate $25,000 to pay for citywide polling to be completed, we're hoping by October of this year, so that the results can inform this body, the council's consideration of any mid-year adjustments to the annual budget. But we think that standardized polling process should be set up and really be targeting underserved and underrepresented neighborhoods. And to do that, you can do oversampling to ensure that no communities are left behind. So I know that the city auditor has done surveying, but it's pretty clear that though even the way that the questions are designed don't necessarily get to the needs and the issues in these communities that have so far been underrepresented. And so we are also recommending that the Measure U committee be a participant in helping set up the polling questions and reviewing them to make sure that these surveys can really reach out and be inclusive of the neighborhoods and the communities who are too often left out of this process for a lot of reasons. And so we're asking that you establish an annual allocation of $25,000 and that it be an ongoing commitment to help us really ensure that the voice of the communities who are intending to be served through our inclusive economic development, through the people who are serving on the Measure U committee can really be meaningfully met. And so that is in addition to the participatory budgeting allocation, we are also asking for an annual allocation of $25,000 for citywide polling, oversampling in the neighborhoods that are too often left behind, and that the Measure U committee have the opportunity to participate in reviewing the questions of the survey and in drafting them. So I'll turn it back over to either Flo or Chair Flo or questions.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Really appreciate it. And thank you also, Debbie. As a closing note, I just want to, thank the council first and foremost for giving us this opportunity and space to be able to present. We are a committee of 15 members, and it has taken a while. We're almost twice the size of you, and so it's taken us a while to be able to come up with our priorities. And we have very strong personalities and really quite thoughtful and really knowledgeable people on our committee. And so I just want to emphasize to you that these recommendations are coming with unanimous support from our very diverse body, saying this is a real priority. And that we are standing behind this because we're watching and hearing from our community what's happening right now, and certainly the need to be able to make ongoing investments, and also the need to be able to be a responsive, city to the needs that have been identified and articulated by voices throughout our city. And so we'd like to make sure that we're doing that in a consistent and clear way, and that we are doing that over time in a way that allows us to be able to be nimble, but also to be consistent. And so I'm hoping that these two investments will be part of not only just our, city's commitment with the Measure U money, but hopefully a path forward for us to be able to have a really strong engagement with the neighborhoods in Sacramento.
Well, thank you very much for, I think, a very thorough presentation. We really appreciate it. And I know there'll be questions and comments from the council members. But I know we have 4 members of the public who have called in. Why don't we hear from members of the public? Then we'll open it up to council comments and or questions and or dialogue with the Measure U Advisory Committee leadership. All right?
Thank you. May we have our first caller, please? Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Thank you very much. My name is Richard, and I have lived and worked and own a business here in the Sacramento area for the last 40 years. And I'm in total support of keeping the funding for the police. Measure U back in 2012 was approved by over 64% of the people, and was for a half a cent tax to help improve the protection of our local communities. And again, in 2018, that was brought back to the people, and 56% of them agreed to go ahead and continue to protect our local community, but with an emphasis to our local minority communities and communities of color. 56% have supported it with the support of the local businesses. We need to have our police officers here. We need to have the protection that they afford us, and we need to have them in our budget. It's a shame that we're going to have the pressure of a very small minority group of protesters, or whatever is the pressure point, to try to press us into disbanding part of or taking some of the funding away from our local police department. I honestly urge you to not support that. Remember, back then, it was the entire board in 2012 approved the ballot measure. And the only oppositional write-up, which didn't get onto the board, was from the mayor at the time, Johnson. But the ballot did pass, 64% of those, and then 56% again come back and approve it again. We can't not ignore the voice of the people in Sacramento. We need to have our police. So I urge you, please, do not take the money away from our local police officers. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
1 second.
Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council. Caller, please make your comments.
Okay, it's going.
Caller, please make your comments.
Well, I think there's a technical issue here.
Please turn down the audio on the device that you're watching the meeting. It's your turn to make comments.
Okay, well, it's a recording of Mayor Steinberg, so keep listening.
It's
Okay,
your turn to make comments.
Hold on 1 second here. We will give you your full 2 minutes. None of this is detracting from anybody's time. We just can't hear. So I think what the city clerk is asking is if you're calling in, it's important that you turn off your television set. I know I like to watch myself as well on TV when I'm speaking, but to turn it down so that we can hear you, and we'll give you obviously your full time.
This is a pre-recorded audio, so this is my public comment, what you're hearing right now.
Okay, caller, please make your comments.
Okay.
They say it doesn't mean eliminate the police department. It means shifting the funding from the police department to the community in various ways. And I support that idea. 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 We have communities who have been echoing this for years. Worst of all, before Oscar Grant was killed in Oakland. We have organizations who are already doing this. They would love the money. They would love that. Says the application process to apply for that money. So if you're willing to really divest from the police, use funds to actually go into community resources, you can set that up. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, that's what we're talking about. That's the point. That's what we want to do. Those organizations who are doing the work, who are underfunded, who are willing to volunteer and put in their time to get back to the community, as opposed to the police, because we know the more interaction we have with the police, the more likelihood we have of being killed. That's just that. That's what we want to do. Councilmember Carr said, we are accountable. But I invite you to get engaged in this conversation about how we shift this money, the exact thing that you're asking for, in a way that improves public safety and dedicates more money to mental health and the other areas that are so underfunded. That would be very constructive. It would be very helpful to us. And I support that idea. And I support that idea. And I support that idea.
Well, I got to say, I agree with that speaker. I think he was very well spoken, and that was a fine point. I think I get, if I get the gist of the caller's comment, wants to see resources shifted from traditional public safety to differential non-law enforcement response. We're going to hear from Bridget Dean in just a few moments to discuss that exact issue. Thank you, caller. Next.
Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council. Caller, are you there? Our phone queue operator said they were non-responsive. Caller, are you there? Thank you. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hello, my name is Neha Sharma, and I am a constituent from District 1. I think that the Measure U Advisory Committee is spot on in terms of nailing what was communicated to constituents and what our community wants. Measure U feels like it was miscommunicated. In the document, page 4, it very much aligns with my experience as a constituent and what I voted for. I felt very betrayed, learning that a lot of this money would go to the police, and the fact that the money has been drastically increased, what was already allocated to the police has been drastically increased, far more than what we thought we were giving our tax money to. And I feel incredibly silenced and not heard. And, you know, I've noticed that we've align the word safety with police and fire. And while I feel that with fire, police is definitely not accurate in terms of like those two things alone are not accurate in terms of summarizing what safety means. And, it's very interesting to see who feels safe with police and who doesn't. And mental health, as that recording had, there are plenty of other agencies that are important to making the community feel safe, and police are not the answer. Your CIDs are amazing and they uplift the community, and nowhere in your CIDs are police. And we want you to do something. And Measure U, the committee has correctly identified our concerns, our needs, and our wants. And if you feel that you don't have enough staff or money to carry out, well, then guess what? You have the power of the money, of the purse. That is an obstacle that you have created. No one but you can create that issue, and we want you to do.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is complete. Will you make your final comment, please?
Please listen to your committee. They have correctly identified the needs of the community. And if you choose not to, you are listening to your ego and you are too big.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Mayor, I have no more speakers.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Again, we have the Measure U Advisory Committee leadership obviously still on. Let's turn it over to members of the council for comments and questions. Who would like to weigh in here?
Carr, then Harris.
Who's that? Councilmember Carr first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the committee's report, but I don't really have an understanding of what participatory budgeting looks like. How does it operate? And how will we know if we did it? Could you walk through the steps that you're thinking about when you say participatory budgeting?
Debbie, do you want to take this or do you want?
Sure. I mean, I can start, and I'd love for both Flo and Kathy to jump in here. So what it looks like is there's a committee that's formed, and I think our discussion with the Measure U committee was that we're a committee, and that the committee could really function to help shape and set the framework for how participatory budgeting would work in the city. And so there's some initial work that goes on around what would some priorities be, how does it align with the intent of Measure U funding, and how could we structure this, the process. So it's, when we take it out and engage residents, it isn't this wide free-for-all, but there has been some initial work that goes on to really shape the process, think through the process, so that it's aligned with recommendations that have a high likelihood, that can be more successfully implemented. So it starts with the smaller group, steering committee. They shape the process and effort, and then it moves out to identifying what areas of the city we want to engage residents. There are meetings that happen, a lot of communication that happens. Pre-COVID, there was a lot of face-to-face meetings, and then there's a voting process, and then the final votes of each of these meetings in different areas of the city are then refined, and the top priorities and funding recommendations then are forwarded to City Council. I have been in communication with the participatory budgeting folks around what has been happening post-COVID. How has the process changed? That process has continued. They had a bit of, they were trying to figure out too, how do we do this by Zoom? How do we ensure the right people are around the table in a virtual kind of way? They have been working out those bugs, and they have been continuing to really do this formative work with the smaller steering committee to ensure that the process that's implemented is casts a wide net and is aligned both in an appropriate way, so that we're kind of setting the process up for success, that many of the recommendations could be implemented, and the process of how we listen and who we engage with is also robust.
So a group of people get together and develop something and take it out to people, and bring it back?
Yes, Councilmember Carr.
Is this written up anywhere?
Yes.
Can I get a summary of? I don't really have a good idea of what you're talking about and how
Yeah,
it all.
thank you for that. I did have a PowerPoint presentation. I didn't want to spend a lot of time. I did send a simple infographic that outlines the stages of the process, as well as organizations that are now implementing it. And I'll send that over. So that
I'd
you all-
appreciate that. I'd like some better understanding.
And can I just?
And Flo.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
The second thing that you're asking for is a annual population polling. Are you familiar with what the city auditor is already doing?
Yes.
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 Mm-hmm.
And
where does that fall short of what you're asking for?
it's, I think if I recall, it's the types of questions weren't really reflective of the needs that we've been hearing from in our community. They're just very broad, general questions. I'm not exactly sure if it was just done through, the emails and some postings, but the most significant concern that we had was that the type of questions weren't designed to get at the issues that we're hearing from communities about the things that they feel are needed or that are falling short. And so absent having community voice in actually establishing the questions, we think we're not going to get at the real inclusiveness that we think is merited. And we also think that just a standardized, if you're not oversampling in the areas that typically don't participate, you are not going to be getting an accurate reflection. And so looking at how to do that differently, ensuring you're having the community voice and even what you're asking, we think is fundamentally critical to really shaping a meaningful budget that reflects the needs and interests of the community.
And Councilmember Carr, I wanted to.
I agree. I think we could dig down one more level on that poll, because one of the callers talked about sometimes we think public safety means
Correct.
Police and fire, and there are many other elements involved. And when people say their number one priority is public safety, we might want to dig down another level to see exactly what it is.
And
they
Councilmember
need.
Carr, that's exactly what the goal of the polling is to drill down on, because I think I would say my number one priority is public safety. I want to feel safe too. The question, and I want to quote you back to you, is, I want to tell you, that I want a sweet dessert. I don't want to give you a recipe and tell you how to make the dessert for me, right? And so I think the goal is to be able to be really clear on what people want. And then the job is to be able to fill in how then do we achieve that. And I think so far we've been focused so much on how we achieve it and not actually, is this actually heading us in the direction of our goal? I also wanted to go back to your initial question of sort of what is participatory budgeting. It's both a process and a budget. So it means that you spend a very small amount of money on the process of how do you engage voices, because you can't just go out and say, hey, we have this pot of money, please spend it, right? The goal is to be able to actually include people who are typically left out of the process and allow them to be able to be responsive to their needs. It's a good way to be able to pilot new ideas that maybe wouldn't necessarily be something that you'd want to fund on an ongoing basis until you had more information about them. It's a way to be able to engage members of the community in identifying what those needs are and having them, as Debbie mentioned in her presentation, having them actually be more civically engaged because they better understand what the process looks like and what's possible. And so it's both a learning opportunity and a way to be able to put real dollars into communities that they're allowed to decide on a regular basis to be able to guide those dollars. And so we can certainly provide more information because there's an entire organization focused on it. And they've come and done a presentation at the October Measure U committee. And we also have additional supporting documents if there are other questions.
I've long held that councils and boards spend way too much time and give way too much reverence to budgets, and no time and no reverence to what those budgets should accomplish. And my dealings with people in the community for over 25 years has been, people are very good with telling you what they need and what their values are. They aren't very well equipped to tell you how to do it or how much money to put behind it. So the fact that you say participatory budgeting kind of throws me back a little bit, because it should be focused on participatory value setting. What is it that we want as a community? And drill down on that with enough specificity that we can give that direction to the budgeteers and to the professionals to develop strategies for achieving it. And then a budget only comes to resource that strategy. So it seems like we got it turned upside down a little bit.
Well, that's what the polling's for.
I
So the
really would
polling is
like-
to help us with the value setting.
I really would
And the
like to understand how this all works first, and then we can talk about more about it later. So thank you. Thank you for all the hard work, working in the dark and seemingly unappreciated, but we appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. I know I will have some suggestions about how we might move forward on this important piece at the end, but let us now turn it over to Vice Mayor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. As is often the case, I agree with Larry's philosophy about this. You know, I have to tell you, Flo, that I really appreciate the fact that you and Kathy, Debbie, and everybody on the committee have invested a tremendous amount of time. You know, you've looked at our budget, you've thought about these issues. And I understand, I think, your frustration that your recommendations to council seem to fall on deaf ears. Is that a fair statement that you feel that way?
Yes.
So that's a problem. To me, that's a problem that, you know, we did a ballot measure and we raised taxes. We made promises to the people about what it would be used for. But they were pretty vague promises. And quite frankly, you even put in your staff report, Flo, exactly the language from the ballot statement. And it was largely about public safety. Now, you said that you want to feel safe. I think everybody does. You know, this whole discussion about participatory budgeting presupposes that the council is not getting it right for the community, as you are, I guess, defining it. Because, you know, we do have a lot of policies in place and ways that we reach out to our communities as council members to try to gather the information to represent people adequately. What I hear you saying is that we're not getting it right, that we're not drilling deep enough. I would agree with you completely that the auditor's poll that he put out had pretty broad questions. They didn't drill deep. They didn't get to the heart of the matter. I agree with you completely. I don't think we have to do an alternate poll. I would be fine with you creating a list of questions on your committee about how to reach the people, but there's no point in doing a duplicative process. You know, the council felt that we would invest in this poll through the auditor, and it is a scientific poll. You know, if you want to write the questions, I'm absolutely fine with that. In fact, I would be really interested to see what you come up with. You know, I have to tell you that all three of you here in the meeting today are exceptional women that I have a deep respect for. And I'm very happy to see Debbie Odo-Kent because I haven't seen her for a while. The idea of participatory budgeting again tells me that there is somewhat of a disdain of the council, that we're just not meeting we're not hitting the sweet spot in terms of making everybody feel adequately represented. But Larry raises a very good point that if we know exactly what people are thinking, then we can allocate the money. I mean, that's why we're hired. That's why we ran for office, to craft our city budget to meet our constituents' needs. That's basically our job description. And so I have a little bit of a problem with some of the ideas that you're presenting. Look, there are many different opinions in the city, many different opinions in the city. And as a council member, we all know that we cannot make everybody happy. You know, that's just a given. Some people will always disagree with our policy decisions. Some people will think we're completely screw loose. And some people will say, man, you do a great job. That comes with the territory. One problem I have with this is that how would it be staffed? We just went through an item to consider not staffing up vacant positions. But what you're talking about with participatory budgeting, are you envisioning city staff making this process move forward? Are you envisioning having the committee run its own scenario here? I mean, are you talking about burdening the city with new employees, with OPEB and benefits and all of the burden that we deal with? How do you see this working, Flo?
Well, I would say that existing staff could definitely make this work. We have, our community enrichment, obviously that's part of IPSI. And so that seems like a really natural fit for them. The same thing would be true for economic development, especially since, I think our economic development staff initially thought they were going to have a lot bigger budget and a lot more to do, and they don't. So I think that there are two really sort of natural fits for the existing staff. And since, I've been listening on this call and many other meetings where we're not planning on cutting back on staff. So given that the budget is, has changed somewhat, I think that there are probably some FTE available to be able to support something like this. And I certainly appreciate, Vice Mayor Harris, your concerns about, look, you're never going to make everybody happy. And I would argue, in a city of our size and in a city/state/country of ours, that when we think about equity, that's not the goal. When we think about equity, the goal is to look at who has been left behind, who has been systematically disenfranchised, who has been harmed by our processes, and think about what does it look like to be able to actually do repair. So there's a status quo, which is we do what we've always done and we get what we've always gotten. And systems are absolutely perfectly designed to get the outcomes that they do. The question though is, are we satisfied with those outcomes? Are we satisfied knowing that, if you are born poor or Black or brown, you have much less of a likelihood of having even your basic needs met? That, if you look at our homeless population, homelessness is also an issue of gender and of race, right? And so if we're satisfied with that, then we should all pat ourselves on the back and say we've done a really good job. But if we're not satisfied with what we see right now, then we absolutely have to do something different. And that does not mean that we value all voices in the exact same way when they come and provide complaints. It doesn't mean that we disregard people, but we do have to really consider, it's sort of like triaging if you're coming into an emergency room. Not everyone who comes in deserves immediate care because not everybody's emergency is quite as urgent. And that's really what we're talking about here when we're thinking about how we go about these processes and how we set our priorities. And I'm hoping that that's something that, we can agree upon, that the status quo isn't going to cut it and that we actually have to do something different if we're going to be addressing the needs of people who have been left out. And that just can't be what we've always done. So it's not as much going after the council or saying you're doing something wrong. It's saying we want to finally fix some of these things that have been deep, intractable issues for generations. And in order to do that, we have to do something different.
Well, Flo, with great respect, I'd just like to say that.
Last comment, then we're going to move on to other members, please. Go ahead.
This is an interesting concept. Essentially, what I see you asking for is to be quasi-council members. If our job is to make budgetary decisions, which we do almost every week, and you feel we are not doing an adequate job of meeting the needs of the community, then you want to assume those powers. I understand that. I get it. But I'm not sure it's actually the right course to take, although I would love to give you a much deeper voice in what the council decision-making pathway is. As far as the staffing goes, I think it's not an accurate presumption that we have staff that can just take this on. It's actually a significant project, and it will require, a lot of attention. And, unless you want to take it all on yourself. You've given me a lot to think about. And in a way, it almost seems like this would be the council trying to buy respect from the community. But it is important that your voices are heard. I need to cogitate on this a little bit. I think that you have made some very significant points. And thank you, Debbie. I thought that your presentation was very eloquent. And it kind of changes my opinion about this whole thing. But it's an interesting process. I think I'm where Larry is, that I need to understand a little better and more explicitly exactly what you want to achieve and how you aim to achieve it. You know, I get the direction you want to go, and I support that. I think that we need to flesh this out a little bit more with some direct conversation. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just
Uh,
comment?
hold on.
I would love to have further conversation. We'll definitely get you more information about the process. And I guess I, this characterization about saying that you're not getting it right is not necessarily where I was coming from, right? In really trying to learn more and to see how this fits in and aligns so well with the purpose of the Measure U tax. Yes, participatory budgeting wasn't specifically called out. And yet I do think this is an approach that can move us closer towards the intent of it. I mean, you also said maybe we're not drilling deep enough. I mean, I probably would agree with that. And I love this offer of aligning the existing polling system with more robust input about the kinds of questions that the Measure U committee members would actually want to see on those, right? Where you sit, right? I mean, this is how you receive questions that are asked of you, and love that opportunity that we might have to further explore that. And with regard to the staffing issue, want to continue to have a conversation, but we currently have some funding support to support that. And most of the cities get technical assistance from the participatory budgeting staff, and we've secured that funding for that.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that we get to all the members here and to have the dialogue. Councilmember Warren, then Councilmember Jennings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say, really, it is truly refreshing to hear these very talented women give us the types of direction and feedback that we asked for, as well as, you know, when we went to the community to sell this Measure U tax, we suggested that this committee was going to be put there for a purpose. You know, they're just not a placeholder for, you know, us to kind of use and not really value, I think, the very analysis and information that they're providing to us. And I would go further. I mean, these three women are exceptional. I know that the person that my appointee to the committee, Marge Dickinson, is also an extraordinary woman who has far more experience at these sorts of things than even the council does, you know, most council members. I mean, she served as a high-level executive for a major institution, a wealth of knowledge. And so we have, I believe, a very talented group of people providing us very valued information. And, you know, I think we don't have to ask the question whether our community is completely satisfied with the direction the city's going. We see it every day in the streets. I mean, we see people standing up saying they want something different. And part of that is us really understanding that people are hurting, and in order for us to help this city heal, we got to do some things different. Now, if we're about trying to make the improvements that people are crying out for, then obviously we got to do something different. And it was stated, I think, by one of our presenters that if we want the same results, then we just keep moving along as we have been, and we don't need additional feedback. But this, in my opinion, is something that the question has already been answered, has been asked and answered, and we really need to, I think, be about trying to figure out how to implement the changes needed so that we get the city that we ultimately want to go forward with, where people feel like they are being heard. And so I do not have a challenge with additional funding for the committee. I think the committee, the folks on the committee are volunteering their time to really help this city heal and go forward. And I think some of the suggestions that they've made are suggestions we're hearing all over the city and in fact throughout the country, and really figuring out how to right size departments, how to right size and make our city more efficient. I think it's something that we all strive for. And I have no problem with receiving direction like we do from each department in the city and staff. And I wouldn't have any problem receiving direction from this committee, providing that we understand what the intent is. And the intent is to help our city go forward and become ultimately the kind of city that everybody has a voice, and people's that need the triage, if you will, the most, they should have a seat at the front of the line at some point. And now I believe is the time where we can start to deal with some of those issues, you know, in some way, shape, or fashion. And so I appreciate the comments and the analysis and the information, and looking forward to continuing to work with the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Warren. Councilmember Jennings.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to let Dr. Flo and Kathy Cresswell and Deborah Odell Kent, I just want to thank you for the work that you've done on this in getting us to this point. I think your request for the two things of funding of participatory budgeting and also funding for the polling, I think are things that we should seriously look at. I did some research and found a policy brief on local progress, the National Municipal Policy Network, co-authored by the Participatory Budgeting Project. And in it, it talks about our neighboring city of Vallejo, establishing the first citywide participatory budgeting process in the US in 2013, where over 4,000 community members decided on how to spend $3.2 million. It also talks about the fact that projects can be implemented in Vallejo by the city department, by a non-city agency, a community-based organization, a local nonprofit, and on any number of different things that they can do it on, whether it be community gardens, small business grants, park improvements, youth job training programs, cleanup efforts, and transitional housing for the homeless. So I just gave you a taste of the research of what's happening in Vallejo. And I think there's some things I want to just say to the three of you as far as moving forward. I think this idea is the start of the education process for this council. And I think as you take the start of the education process, we have to do more educating, because this is a new process for us. You guys have been involved in it for a minute as far as really understanding it and testing it out. But for us, this is the first time we're really getting into this type of process. So I think there has to be more education. I think we can do that in a workshop where we bring up the city of Vallejo or whatever other city that you want to, and have a workshop between the two cities so that we can really understand why they've done it and why it's been successful and why it might be successful here. And at that point in time, after we've done some education and we've done the workshop, I believe we ought to pilot test on a small scale, a small amount of money in maybe a specific area to be able to show the results of what happens when you in fact do something like participatory budgeting in a community that is often left behind. So I think at that point in time, you can do the polling at that point in time. You can also do the pilot tests there at the same time. And then that's another part of the education. It's also a part of the proof that this may work in the city of Sacramento. And we can also figure out all the logistics in order as far as manpower and the process for making it work. So I think what I'm saying in all of this is I support your proposal for polling and some type of participatory budgeting process. I think we need to go a little bit slower. We need to educate. I think we got to find a way to work better together. If there's anything that I've said through this whole conversation, I just want to reiterate that I feel strongly that we have to find a way to work better together. And in doing so, we all do what we signed up for when we took the oath of office, is we represent the people by working better together, as opposed to two separate entities that, you know, are going in the same direction, but in different paths. And so I want us to make sure that we do that. And I think this is the starting point to getting that done. Okay? So with that, I support what you're doing. I just want to go a different route of getting there, which is through education, through the pilot tests, and make all of it happen over time so we can see the results and see that it's something that can be effective in the city of Sacramento. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Jennings. I'd like to make a couple of comments here. And I want to tie it back to the conversation that we had over the last couple of hours on the overall budget. I enthusiastically support this idea of participatory budgeting for all the reasons that have been articulated. This community is a community that proudly wants change while also maintaining the core of all that is good. The community is crying out for more of a voice. And yes, we are the elected representatives who do have the responsibility to make the ultimate decisions on the big picture. To me, there is absolutely nothing wrong, and in fact, everything right, with taking a discrete amount of money and starting to empower the broader community to have a more direct say in some I emphasize, of the decision making. And I do believe, from what I have seen and studied, that this has the potential to actually create more trust and even bond between elected officials, our overall city government, and all of the people, including the people who are demanding that we not wholesale switch out what our core priorities are, but that we expand on the definition of what we consider to be a core city priority. So here is an opportunity, and I think we ought to test it. We have, I put out this idea that out of the $11 million of vacancies that are currently not being used, that we take $5 million and we set that aside for consideration about how we might want to invest that. Now, we know that in the mid-year, because I'm confident, relatively confident, that we're going to have some more resources. Councilmember Jennings' CIP proposal and addressing the obligation we have to our parking fund are going to be first and foremost. But what I would intend to bring forward is a proposal that says, let's take that $5 million or so. We still have more work to do to identify that is firm. Let's take that $5 million and let's put it towards the first participatory budgeting effort in our city. $5 million. That doesn't take away from the core services. It doesn't involve laying people off or even eliminating current vacancies on the sworn side. But it is an opportunity here, and I think we ought to take it. Now, I've heard various opinions from the city council, and you know, as I like to say, there are 9 CEOs up here who all will weigh in and get to weigh in. But I think we ought to. I think we ought to bring that forward. What we need, I think, from the Measure U Advisory Committee, as articulated by some of my colleagues, is working with us, and I'd be happy to work directly with you, with our city staff and with other members, to actually devise a work plan so that if the council said yes, that in January, as part of the mid-year, which is probably when we would do this, maybe before, depending upon whether or not we could get the work plan together, that we actually have the specificity behind what we would what we would do, what the participatory process would actually look like. How many community meetings? How would you break it down by neighborhood? What would be the scope of the $5 million so that we could actually lead to a successful first try of this? And then when it works, which I anticipate it would work, then we launch into the next budget cycle with some wind at our back around a concept that has been proven in reality. So that's what I stand behind. I appreciate that there needs to be more education and there needs to be more work on this, but let's combine the education with a specific proposal, with the resources that we identified just over the last couple of hours out of these vacant positions, which doesn't, arguably affect current levels of service or core services for what the city provides, and let's get to work. So I look forward to working with the U Committee and with the city management and with my colleagues to bring forward a specific proposal, and colleagues can obviously opine not just in a discussion item like this, but actually decide whether or not they want to move in this direction. All right, I look forward to that. Thank you very much, Measure U Advisory Committee. Any final comments, Dr. Kofer?
No, thank you for having us today. We really appreciate it. And we certainly have taken some notes. And so we can talk about next steps. Really appreciate everyone's thoughtful engagement on this and hoping that we can partner on this as we move forward.
Look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Let us now move, I think, to an issue which is related maybe to the broader issues that the U Advisory Committee and the community itself has raised. And that is to put some real beginning detail behind this idea that I brought forward, that the council unanimously approved, to create an Office of Community Response as part of the systemic, intelligent change that everyone seeks. And so, Mr. City Manager?
So I have Bridget Dean on the line here who's going to give us an update on she's our interim director, as you all know. She's been very busy over the last 45 plus days. And she's going to give you an update on some of the changes we've made structurally and some of the progress she's made thus far. So I'm going to turn that over to Bridget.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me today. I am going to touch just to touch on some of the things that have been happening since I've been given this appointment. I want to start out by saying thank you for the opportunity as a resident of Sacramento and as an individual who truly believes in bringing change and support to the community. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity for this. So I just want to touch base on a few of the things that have been happening since my appointment on July 14th. I'm heading into my 8th week of doing this role, and there's been a lot going on, as you all know, especially as council members. You get a lot of the calls that I also get. So we all know that there's a lot of need out there. So I just want to touch base on a few things. Overall, I'm not going to take a lot of your time today, but I do want to share some of the progress and information I've been coming across, but more importantly, just where we are right now moving forward. So I want to restate that I think Sacramento has an enormous responsibility to its community, but I also think we have a phenomenal opportunity to be not just a national program, but to be a national model for change. And I can't stress that enough, that as I've been talking to other cities and different organizations who are moving forward with creating community response departments, I actually have ended up having individuals calling back to me and asking, what are we doing differently in here in Sacramento? Because it sounds so different. And so I just want to stress that I'm not interested in creating a program or a one-off. I think we really have the opportunity to create a national model that can really shift the way we respond to people in crisis in the city of Sacramento. So with that, a couple of things that have come to the forefront. It is clear to me that in the city of Sacramento, we have a massive array of experts in our community that we don't engage with enough, and we're not engaging with regularly. So I want to give a shout out to all of our advocates and our social service providers, our agencies, and our community members who are out there doing the work every day. In our homeless community alone, we have large numbers of individuals who are distributing water, food, other items. They're checking in on people. They're taking care of the individual who might be sleeping on the bench. And while it might not be comfortable for all of us, I think we need to acknowledge that we have a lot of community members that do care and are doing a lot of the work. And so one of my goals is to really coordinate that. You're going to hear me talk a lot about collaboration. I believe in systemic collaboration. We are a city of silos. And I'll share just really quickly a little bit about my background, because I think it's important for people to understand, and because I've heard a lot of the comments and rumors about my personal background. I do, prior to this appointment, I was working as the social services administrator for Sacramento Police Department. I am a social worker. I've been in social work for almost 25 years, and I've been working in homelessness and mental health for about 15 of those. I've had multiple opportunities in my life to work with multiple populations, and I am blessed by that. So first of all, the Kathy, Deborah, and Flo, that was amazing, and I'm really interested in the polling as well. It's actually on my list of asking what some of the need is, because I think it is important that the community has some of that directive. So I came to Sacramento PD in May of 2019. Prior to that, I was at Roseville Police Department, where I started the first social services unit in the region. And that's important. I'm a social worker. I'm not sworn. And it is unique in any law enforcement agency to have a non-sworn individual overseeing sworn units. And so I just need to also credit the city again for some of its forward thinking, because it is not normal to have a social worker training officers to respond in social work models. Prior to that, I was a school social worker and a school administrator. I oversaw a continuation high school for 12 years. So I've been doing the work a long time, and I just really believe that all of that is an opportunity in this position to bring that together. So some of the things we've been working on. I've had over 60 meetings since my appointment in July with residents, business leaders, business owners, community members, our individuals who are living within our encampments right now, our service providers, our nonprofits. I am interested in hearing what the need is. I don't think we can build a department like this if we're not willing to listen to the need. Having said that, we need to be the third part of the triangle of first response. I hear a lot about community safety and public safety, but what we really need to start talking about is first responders. In the end, if somebody's in crisis, they need somebody to come. And this department to me is that opportunity to create that third part of that triangle that is fluid with fire and police, because many calls don't end up one way or another. They might escalate or de-escalate depending. And having that response model available that can serve that person holistically at the time and in the moment that they've decided they're in is really crucial. So I want to stress that looking into this model, it's clear to me that it needs to be a fluid model between first response. That does not rule out our community-based organizations or our community experts at all and in any way. So I just want to be really clear on that. Secondly, I also have been amazingly grateful. I've had a lot of young social workers in our community reach out to me and ask to volunteer their time, and they're doing that because they want to be on the ground floor of this opportunity. So as somebody who's worked in education for a large part of my life, I'm a professor at Sac State as adjunct faculty, and I work with a lot of young people. And this department is a great opportunity for young people to start in on the ground, build the foundation, and really shape where the city is going. And so I want to say a special shout out to Felisa and Anthony, who have stepped up, and they're doing a lot of the research for us right now on their time, because they really believe in shifting the way the city responds to calls for service. I have identified a non-emergency phone number that we already have in place in our dispatch system that isn't used very often. And that's important. I want to talk about the process of calling. It's one of the things that have come up in a lot of my discussions is who determines who goes to the individual who's in need. And I think that's why it's important, A, to use dispatch, because it's up to the person to call who they need. So if they're calling the Office of Community Response number, then that's who they want. They want a group of social workers coming out to support them. However, if they call 911 because they want a police officer, that is their right. I am not going to tell somebody who has a child in mental health crisis who should come for them. And so I think it's important that we acknowledge that. I have, as I said, spoken to many different cities and programs. I'm having follow-up discussions with several. And I've also recently had Toronto, Canada reach out to me, and we're having a meeting next week because there's an international community response organization that's very interested in what we're looking at here in Sacramento. So I just want to say that we are getting interest. Collaborative discussions with the county. As I stated earlier in my share, we seem to be a very siloed group at times, a city. And I find that very unfortunate when we're trying to serve people in need. And the county has stepped up, and we have a working relationship. When I came to Sacramento PD, there was a clinician in the car. And I will be honest with you and tell you the clinician in the car had about a 20% success rate of that individual not having further contact with law enforcement. So when I came into Sacramento PD, I switched that model and I said, I want to give you the warm handoff. I don't want the clinician in the car anymore. The county agreed. We've been running a pilot since November. We're at 70% success rate of that person never having contact with law enforcement since that warm handoff. So the purpose of a model such as this is to create an environment of warm handoff and first response that doesn't have to involve a police officer or fire. Having said that, there are so many calls that police and fire also don't opt or wouldn't choose to go to if they didn't have to, but the community is calling. And I think it's important when we're talking about a lot of the discussion around, why are police going to mental health? Why are police going to homeless calls? It's because the community's calling for that, and the police are responding appropriately. I tell residents frequently, you call, they come. And so I think we need to also be talking on a larger scale when we're talking about shifting models that, for instance, 5150 holds. Most of you know on the council that if you're a mandatory mental health hold, meaning you need to be put into safety for up to 72 hours, it is law enforcement that by legislative law has to transport you. So just that alone is something we need to start talking about and changing if we really want to make a difference. Starting this week, I am meeting with larger groups of advocates, and that's going to be really important to me to hear what the individuals who are out on the street doing the work every day are feeling, what they feel the need is, and really engage them to make sure I'm understanding where they want the supports, because they have to be part of the solution. We cannot create a model that's not existent. The other thing I have happening is I'm bringing on some Sac State social work interns. I've been really lucky in my career to supervise interns in social work. This will be my 18th year of doing that, and I'm really lucky to do that. And I think it gives us another opportunity to engage our young people in the work that we're all doing here. And so I'm looking forward to that. So I just want to touch base on a few things that have come so far from the discussions that I've had with different groups and different agencies. There are 5 goals so far that have come forward in these discussions. 1, people want an improved positive experience for an individual in crisis if they're requesting help. And that's really, obviously, we all agree to that. We need to find another way if somebody is having a crisis that maybe the person coming isn't the best fit for them. Reducing the rate of contact with law enforcement and fire department personnel. Meeting with fire, they have a list of consistent 25 high utilizers that really are social work clients, frankly. They're individuals who might need to have a better connection to their social services provider or their mental health provider, their medications being delivered. They're very simple things. And so we can be reducing a lot of those costs within our system just by reducing the repetitive call for service. So that's one of the areas that we're working on. Increasing access to service providers. One of the goals of this department that would be really successful would be the ability to keep somebody connected to services and keep them connected to services. Again, we have to start really looking at why is somebody calling repetitively or needing repetitive contact? And often it's just because they don't have that consistent hand-holding that's needed through their crisis, but more importantly, the ongoing services and case management that's required. Reducing the impact and overcrowding in our emergency departments. Many people who are in crisis, an emergency department's not the best place either. And so, how do we really get you connected to those community-based organizations that are doing the work that can really serve you and that are within the community that you're living in and experiencing in? And then overall, reducing the calls for service. Again, when we talk about reducing costs, when we start talking about that repetitive caller who might be having patrol or fire coming to their home 5, 6, 10, 15 times a month. We're talking about a lot of funding. So I think it's important to discuss that. So the other thing I want to touch on is just some of the calls for service that I think an Office of Community Response can take on. And then I'll talk a little bit about restructuring. So obviously homeless related calls for service. Homelessness is not a crime. And yet we've depended on our law enforcement officers to consistently respond to those. In July, almost 2,900 calls for service came in related to homelessness to the police department. We can shift that if we're building the collaborative teams that are going out and responding to those instead. Obviously, we talk a lot about mental health issues. That's something that we can definitely start addressing. However, mental health is one of those areas where you need fluidity between departments because they can escalate. I've been on hundreds, if not thousands, of mental health calls for service in my job as a social worker in law enforcement, but also as a social worker. And I can tell you that often we run into those escalating situations that might require a different response or at least somebody to help mitigate it. School campus issues. We hear a lot about our youth. And as somebody who worked with youth for many years of my career, the school to prison pipeline is real. So how do we start shifting that? If I'm a juvenile who's having issues, or I'm a juvenile who's starting to get into quote unquote trouble, how do we connect somebody to the services and maybe the mediation they need to resolve that? A school fight on campus. A lot of those things could be coming to a department that that would provide mediation and counseling services or social work intervention versus a police officer. So I think we can talk about those things. Family and youth crisis, again, family disturbances, many of them could be handled by a social work model and should be. That's family systems is social work 101. Neighborhood issues, code enforcement. One of the council members earlier mentioned code enforcement. If I'm an individual with issues with my property and code enforcement has to come out, wouldn't it be better maybe that code enforcement's coming with support services to help you mitigate what the situation is, so that if it's a repair on your house, we can help you get that done so that you can get the services you need and you can stay in your home? I think we need to start really expanding that discussion. And then, of course, all the mental health calls, 5150s, voluntary transfer, substance use disorders. All of those areas are areas that I think this new department could really start taking on and respond to. Social work is a ecological and holistic response model. And I think there's place for everybody to be at the table. I really want to encourage all of the council members to not remove anybody from the table in these discussions. I have had some difficult discussions with people, and I'm okay with that. I tell everybody all the time, please feel free to reach out to me. I will gladly have the discussion with you. But everybody has to be at the table. And that means our first response systems and different individuals that may not always agree with each other. But we have to start breaking the silo and create a real collaborative framework if we're going to change the way we're responding to people in crisis in our community. With that, I do want to mention that the Homeless Services Division has come under Office of Community Response. I think that's a very solid and natural fit as we're responding to more homelessness in our community. And I think that it's important to work together and find other ways with housing and alternative options more broadly as a city than just one-offs here and there. So that's a lot of information in a very short time. I just wanted to give you an update of where I am and what we're working on. And I'm open to any questions if you have them.
First of all, I just want to thank you for a very thorough presentation. Now we got a couple questions, but I think we want to keep it relatively brief. I think this might be an appropriate topic for a workshop in the near future, because this is such an important piece of our evolving city. And as you are developing this, I think the council would appreciate sort of engaging in how this develops. But let me turn it over to Vice Mayor, then I'll put a couple questions on the table and then
Mayor?
Yes.
Super sorry to cut you off. Can I jump in really quick because I need to go?
You need to go. Go ahead, Angelique, of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I thought we had that cleared up a little better. My fault.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, this actually, Bridget, great presentation. I'm going to take us off of that for 1 second. I just need to tell my colleagues, give you a real quick update and say thank you to the Sacramento Fire Department. We had an 800-acre fire that stopped about 200 yards short of District 1, West Lake community to be specific. We shut down I-5 and we had 100 firefighters and they were able to stop the fire incredibly in this wind right there. 2 structures burned, both in the county out by the Amazon Fulfillment Center, both, I think, abandoned homes or maybe abandoned farms, or at least everyone appeared to be gone. But a really fast-paced, fast-moving fire. And I watched 100 firefighters put themselves between that blaze and my constituents. And I just want to say thank you. That was one of the scarier moments in my 10 years here. And I've had more than my share of scary moments out here on the edge of the city. And I definitely have had more than my share of fires, but that one was really big and really scary and fast and close. And so, you know, those firefighters across our state right now are just doing heroes work. And, you know, when you're out there on scene and you see West Sac and Consumnes River and Metro Fire and all of them jointly responding to help the city of Sacramento, you just remember how important our contribution is to the greater good here in the state, not just our city. But particularly today, those guys saved me from evacuating probably 2,000 people out of Westlake, and with probably within about 200 yards of having to do that. So I thank the chiefs and CHP for their quick help in shutting down the freeway, which is where we were able to hold the line. And I'm just a very grateful council member today, and I want to thank my colleagues. I'm sorry I missed some of the front end of the meeting. I came in partway through there. I obviously look like I just walked through a fire, so I kept my video off. Sorry about that. And I have something else now that I need to get to, but I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all, you know, for allowing me to miss for a bit. And Mayor, you were in constant contact with me on text there, and I know retweeting some of the information we were trying to get out to people in Natomas. The air quality in the city is bad. The air quality in Natomas is so bad that we had to shut down the freeways because you can't see. So I appreciate you all very much, and I appreciate the firefighters and our first responders, and to my community, thanks for being really patient and prepared and calm. All right, thank you. That's it from me, Mayor.
Thank you. Totally appropriate. And just thank God that everyone out there is okay. Thank you to the firefighters. You were exactly, Angelique, where you should be. And we will all catch up, but speaks about the importance of public safety here, absolutely, and the life and death role that our fire service plays, and we appreciate you. Thank you.
Just so you know, I mean, that fire, we don't know what started it yet, and but 800 acres is really a lot, even for our grassy areas. That's really a big one, and you know, to fight those fires, there's not like fire hydrants in the middle of the field. So all that money and that we spend on equipment like tankers and stuff, that's how we put out that fire before it gets to Westlake. There wasn't a single like hydrant in that space that they could go to. So this is about, you know, 100 people, but it's also about our investment in, you know, new engines and the way that those engines can move across fields, and sometimes they can't, and that can be a real problem out here. It's why we have to have so many different kinds of rigs and things like bulldozers and stuff that we had on standby. Lots of lines down, SMUD out there trying to help. So a lot of this is really about City of Sacramento being a well-resourced fire service, and that saved my community today. So thank you.
Very good. We will continue to follow and keep on top of it. Appreciate it. We'll catch up on the rest of this. So let us get back to Brigitte and our presentation. I know Vice Mayor Harris had some questions or comments. I know I do as well. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'd like to just piggyback on what Angelique Ashby just said. We have invested in a lot of brush rigs and it just paid off. When you need firefighters, you need them and you need them badly. And there they were. So great job to our fire department. Mr. Mayor, first I wanted to thank you because you are the one who brought forward the idea of an alternative response method. You brought this on early in the COVID crisis, and I think you were spot on with this idea. I also think that we couldn't have done better than to hire Bridget Dean. I've known Bridget for a while and worked with her certainly on the Meth Sobering Center project, but just about homeless generally for over a year. She has the right experience and the right drive, obviously. You can see the drive and the passion. I think that we are moving in a great direction here. We really do need to deliver our response to the homeless population and those with mental health issues in a very different way. It's not easy to make that change and it's not cheap to make that change, but it will yield benefits down the road. You know, in the interim, we still have to use our public safety officials in this capacity. But as we build this Office of Community Response, I agree with Bridget that we can become a model and that we will actually get to the heart of the problem here. So I appreciate you, Mayor, for bringing this forward. I'm very pleased that Howard Chan hired Bridget Dean, and I think that we have a really good path to move forward on here, as evidenced by, you know, again, Bridget's passion. But I'm very, very pleased that she was on the committee to start building the Meth Sobering Center, because with her involved, I feel that our chances of success are very high. And of course, that's a big piece of the puzzle in addressing homelessness. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Are there other members who are up? Councilman Carr.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question, Bridget. How large is your office now, and how large do you think it needs to be to fulfill the mission that you envision for it?
You may be on mute.
Sorry about that. Our Zoom world, right? Currently, we just have the myself, and then just recently had the Homeless Services Division, and our violence prevention, I forgot to mention that early, is also coming up under OCR. So staff-wise, you know, a lot of this work I've been doing solo, and that's been okay, but I have great community, like I said, response and volunteers right now. Where it has to go, I do think we have to have teams that I would love to see this department truly be a 365, 24/7 response. I think if we're really going to shift the model, it cannot be, you know, you have this team of social workers that come out to you when you're in homelessness or crisis or mental health issues between 8 and 5 p.m., but come 2 a.m., you're right back to where we've been for a long time. So I think if we're going to really staff this, I think we have to look long term about what does that look like. And it would be having at least 1 or 2 teams available every shift that they could go out and respond as needed. So number wise, I don't know. I am working on that to put that together. And I also think, Larry, that we have to consider hiring social workers that are trained in the field of that kind of social work model response, because there's places for everyone. And I am not in any way dissuading or knocking peer lived experience or different levels of response. I just think we have to have leadership on those teams to really make it happen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I want to follow up on that. First of all, I really believe this, that we are lucky that you have agreed to take this on, because I think you're really starting out in exactly the right way by reaching out to, as you say, the many silos within our community around these issues. I also think it's especially noteworthy, and I want to thank the city manager and you for making this move to put the Office of Violence Prevention and Office of Homeless Services underneath your larger vision and larger unit, because all these, that's one way to end the silos within the city, is that all of these issues are integrated. I do think And not that I don't expect an answer now, but one of the reasons why I think a workshop might be helpful here is at some point sooner than later, I think the public is going to want to know, and the policy, I know I want to know, what the breadth of this new department is actually going to be. How many people? You gave us a hint just a moment ago about it being a 24/7 function and not just a pilot during certain shifts and hours. But the public wants to know, and I want to know, when we identify the categories which aren't going to require a law enforcement response, how many calls are we talking about shifting? What then is the budget and what resources may in fact shift? What is the actual magnitude of this? Because I do think that the cynicism out there, not about you, Bridget, but just about us, is that, well, this will be a nice pilot. Yeah, we'll see how it works. This will be something to try and report back, as opposed to a real commitment to a systemic change. Look, what are we doing here? When you step back and look at this, we in part are redefining what we want our police officers to do in the 21st century, and differentiating between what they must do and what we want them to do, and what can be handled in a non-law enforcement manner. And so the magnitude and the scope of this, including the categories, the estimated numbers of calls for services, and thus what it's going to take for your new department to partner with the community and actually deliver this systemic change, not the pilot, is really crucial. And so you are laying the foundation in the right way, because what's worth doing is worth doing right. But we want to come back, I think, sooner than later, and maybe it's in workshop form, to really flesh this out in greater detail and to let you lead with your expertise. But I know I want to know, what is the magnitude of this? And I hope that it is significant, because that's what the community expects. And now you've got $4 million, to get started in laying that out with even more specificity. So when do you think a workshop with that kind of detail might be appropriate?
Well, Mayor, a lot of that is being worked on. As I said, I'm 45 days into this, so I have
47.
I have been working on polling different calls for service and different stats related in law enforcement to see what can come over. I'm not opposed to a workshop. I would ask for a little more time, and frankly, let me process that. I'm not going to give you a day today, but I do think that one of the purposes for me right now is really building those relationships and bridges into our advocacy community. Because when we talk about silos, they've been siloed. And I know that a lot of you have different, we all have different relationships maybe with different organizations, but we have a lot of organizations in this community that do amazing work, and they also don't feel heard. And so if we're going to do this right, we really need to build the bridges and the collaborations first and then move forward. So I will get back to you with a workshop date, and I am pulling stats not only from police but fire. As I stated earlier, I think there's a lot of calls for service that fire and medic go on that don't necessarily need to be responded to with a uniform per se. And to your point, I did not take this role. I did not accept this appointment to create a pilot. I'm in this for the systemic change. And so I'm hoping that we continue to move forward, and I'll get back to you with a date on a workshop.
Mayor, can I add on to that?
Yes, please.
So as I made the appointment for Bridget to take on this role here, she and I discussed, and I believe you and I talked early on when this was in the early days, that while she's going to bring on some social workers, and she's been given the thumbs up to do that already, we are also looking at teams within the city that already respond to certain types of calls. So it's going to be a combination of those things.
Interdisciplinary.
Yeah, and it crosses all departmental, and that's why she's reporting out of the city manager's office. It just helps with that tearing down silos.
No doubt about it.
So more to come.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
All right, thank you all very, very much. Thank you, Bridget, for a great report, and thank you to the members and all the stakeholders out there. I encourage you to work with Bridget in our city because, again, this is not, and I know you've said it, it's not going to be top down here. This is a partnership not only within the city, but with the community as well. All right, let's move to our last item today, and that is the whole person care opportunity and choices that we have in front of us. I'd like to welcome Emily Halkin back to the conversation.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint. Okay, so good evening or good afternoon. I don't know what time it is yet. I'm here today, as the mayor said, to provide an update on the Pathways to Health and Home program, which is the city's implementation of the Whole Person Care pilot, and to seek direction from council on a possible extension of the program. As you know, Pathways is a huge collaboration of the city, our 4 health systems, our 5 Medicaid health plans, and many community-based organizations. This slide really shows the magnitude of the collaboration and the variety of partners who've made this program so effective. With me today to discuss some of the outcomes of the program to date and the impact of Pathways on the community's broader effort to address homelessness is Karen Linkins with Desert Vista Consulting, who is our program evaluator. And I'm going to set a little framework and then Karen's going to jump in. Since Pathways started in 2017, we've served over 2,000 clients who have received almost 250,000 service touches. Attesting to the collaborative nature of this program, you can see here that the program serves clients from all 5 Medi-Cal health plans, receives referrals from those plans, from our hospitals, from our clinic partners, and directly from the unsheltered homeless community via the impact team. 800 people who have entered Pathways, all who entered homeless, have been supported in securing either permanent or transitional housing. And this dashboard, which we produce on a monthly basis, provides really an at-a-glance project level outcomes, but the impacts of Pathways are much broader. Over the past 3.5 years, Pathways has proven to be what I think the mayor called, and I agree with him, the glue in many of the other city efforts around ending homelessness. Pathways community health workers are integrated in with the impact team, enrolling people directly from the streets into the program, as well as aiding them in accessing shelter beds throughout the community. And when a Pathways client is in a shelter, it's been demonstrated that with Pathways wraps them around with the services, they result in a higher positive exit rate from shelters. Because whole person care explicitly cannot pay for housing, Pathways partners really had to get creative to secure housing for our clients. And they did this in a multitude of ways, connecting with the continuum of care and county subsidized programs, developing our own rental subsidy program with a $3 million one-time funds we got from the state. However, the biggest opportunity for Pathways clients is definitely via our partnership with SHRA for the Housing Choice Voucher Pilot, which is also set to end this December. Because Pathways is able to provide the ongoing supportive services and the housing search support for our clients, 177 of our clients have been housed using a voucher, and we have over 300 either looking for housing or in the process to obtain a voucher. Finally, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, our community health workers worked alongside other outreach entities, helping to deliver 25,000 meals and water into encampments. Additionally, the Pathways community health workers assessed almost 300 people in encampments for their risk factors for COVID and referred over 160 of them into preventative quarantine based on that assessment. Currently, we have 145 Pathways clients being temporarily sheltered in the motels and the trailers, and Pathways is an integral part of the community's goal to rehouse up to 500 people from these temporary shelters. In addition to these community impacts, Pathways has also had a profound impact on the lives of the individual enrollees. I'm now going to turn things over to Karen, who's going to share some initial findings from our evaluation of the Pathways program.
Thank you, Emily, and good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and council members. What I'm going to be presenting to you today are very preliminary findings. I say that because we are still in the process of getting data from the program. We are using multiple data sources for the evaluation, and these data sources include data specifically from the health plans, which we have just obtained. We've obtained 4 years of data from the 4 different health plans that are involved. We're also using data that are generated through the shared care plan, which is actually a unique aspect of this program. It's a capacity that was built in the context of this program that allows sharing across organizations. And so what I'm presenting today is going to give you a little bit of a snapshot. The thing to keep in mind in terms of pathways is that this was by design, a community-based care coordination effort. And so what that means is that we took the concept of multidisciplinary team and we actually put it across organizations. And the idea behind this was really actually to inform systemic change. And I think the presentation just prior to this, we will have information that can really inform that effort. This is where the idea was to create a more collaborative approach to increasing the capacity to serve individuals experiencing homelessness with complex healthcare needs. And that's a key component of this, implementing a more responsive system of care, and then introducing new services, but at the same time, coordinating with existing services to have better alignment for stabilization. Next slide. So what I'm presenting to you here are the demographics for the entire period of from the time that the program started in 2017, in November of 2017 to August of 2020. The numbers that I'm presenting here are slightly different from what Emily just shared with you because, you know, at any point in time, we get slightly different numbers. But to date, we've had 2,148 total enrollees, and currently active, we have 910. We took a look at the demographics of the Pathways enrollees compared to the Sacramento 2019 point in time count. And what you see is a lot of consistency across these two populations. The difference is that the Pathways enrollees are slightly higher. The average age is 50 compared to 39. And that's to be expected because we were targeting in this program individuals who have complex health conditions. Next slide. Importantly, one of the places that we start with is looking at health plan enrollment. For those of you who don't know, in the context of Medi-Cal, individuals get assigned to a health plan. And this becomes an issue especially for a population such as those experiencing homelessness, because they don't have addresses to receive mail from the health plans. And so what this slide is showing you is that of the enrollees, the majority, 57%, actually had at least two health plan assignments over the period of between 2016 and 2019. And another 10% actually had 3 or 4 health plan assignments. And what that does is that leads to a situation where individuals don't know their benefits, they don't have a relationship with their health plan, and then that leads to high utilization of the emergency room. Next slide. Other characteristics related to this population, about 3/4 of them are from Sacramento originally, or the Sacramento region. These enrollees were assessed at enrollment, and 90% rated very high in terms of psychosocial challenges, including basic needs, transportation, risky behaviors, health self-sufficiency challenges, substance use, oral health challenges, mental health, and obviously being homeless. 60% of this population had comorbid or trimorbid health conditions, along with substance use and mental health conditions. And then 63% had been without stable housing for 2 or more years. Next slide. Now the slide's a little busy, but the goal here is to share what we know to be the heart of the program and what the evaluation is really demonstrating to be the heart of the program, which is the services provided. And what's important to understand here, and this number again doesn't jive with what Emily just shared you in terms of the total number of services provided, because we were looking at a point in time between November 2017 and September 2019. But what we did was we drilled down into these services to get a better understanding of what is meant by these service touches. And it's important to also acknowledge that these services are being delivered and coordinated across the clinic hubs, the housing providers, and also Sacramento Covered. And Sacramento Covered, for those of you who don't know, plays a triple role in this program. They do field-based outreach. They serve as a medical hub for those who are not assigned to one of the clinic hubs, and they also are a housing provider. And what's important here is that you can see in terms of the distribution of the service types, the majority of the services are really at that front end of the field-based outreach, enrollment, and engagement. And this is really a critical function to have capacity to do to build trust and to locate individuals who are experiencing homelessness. Another third of the services are really around care coordination and enhanced care management, and then followed by the housing supports and case management, and then the social determinants of health. And the social determinants of health include connecting people to health insurance. As I mentioned before, there's some challenges with that, connecting people or arranging transportation and connecting people to other services. And this really creates these types of services, and the intensity of these services really create the conditions for individuals to get to locate and get connected to housing and then retain their housing. And what Pathways is doing is demonstrating the importance of having supportive services to complement housing, because housing alone isn't going to be enough to support individuals with this level of complexity in terms of successfully, staying off the streets. Next slide. So in terms of outcomes, these are, again, preliminary, but we wanted to give you a sense of what we are learning. For individuals who have been graduated or disenrolled from the program, 87% have shown significant improvements in their psychosocial acuity score, which is a big change from the beginning. 831 have been housed across the full continuum of options. And then we also look at things like the extent to which individuals are connected to health insurance or income at disenrollment, and 53% have been connected to an income source. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're employed, but they have been successfully connected to an income source that allows them to be stable. And then 96% have been connected to health insurance, which again is very important.
On that health insurance question.
Sure.
Was the base zero? In other words, you're talking about a population that had no connection to health insurance, and now 96% as a result of the intervention have health insurance, or did some of them have it already?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that's a great question. And I don't have the percentage that have come into the program with health insurance, but one of the functions of Pathways is to connect people to health insurance. So that's actually something that we can look at. I will say that a significant number did come in without health insurance, or they didn't know that they had health insurance because they weren't receiving their health insurance card that was being mailed to them.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. And then the final slide that I have to show you is another way that we're looking at outcomes. As you know, because this is a healthcare program, connected to whole person care, the goal is to address issues like ED, emergency department utilization, inpatient utilization, as well as housing. We were able to do an initial analysis on Anthem members, and what's important about this is that Anthem members comprise the majority of the population that's enrolled in Pathways. So this is actually, interesting to look at. What we did was we looked at individuals in their first month in Pathways, and the top line is showing individuals who were, for lack of a better term, we're calling high utilizers, because when they came into the program in that first month, they were using 2 or more ED visits. They had two or more ED visits. And the reduction from the time that they enrolled to the time that they disenrolled in Pathways is statistically significant. And you can see that that's a very large reduction, which really speaks to the value and the efficacy of the care coordination and all of the other services that are being delivered collaboratively. The other line is showing you individuals who came into the program who had, in that first month, not very high ED utilization. And what this is showing is that the program and the model was able to sustain that level across time, over time, until disenrollment. And that's also really important because as you can tell, I mean, this is a pretty complex population, and the fact that they were able to keep people stable and connected to services over that period of time suggests that the program is working. And I think that that's enough. Emily, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Great, thank you. So thank you, Karen. I now want to pivot a little bit and walk you through the current status of the Whole Person Care pilot, both locally, but also at the state level. So locally, the Pathways program is set to end service delivery this December, with the final funding and reporting activities occurring in early 2021. Before COVID hit, the Pathways team had been developing in partnership with our providers, our health plans, and our health systems, a ramp down approach that would have stopped all program referrals effectively right now by September, and coordinated with the health plans to transition a majority of the clients into other care coordination programs. However, this spring, when COVID-19 hit, not only did we have to pause the work on the transition to allow our healthcare partners to refocus their work and responding to the pandemic, the landscape at the state and federal levels changed the options for our transition of care. In May, the state announced a delay in the launch of what is called the California Advancing and Innovating Medi-Cal Program, or CalAIM. CalAIM is intended to be designed to continue the learnings from whole person care, providing opportunities via health plans for non-clinical interventions that target the social determinants of health and reduce health disparities and equities, all the stuff that Karen just described. CalAIM was scheduled to launch on January 1st of 2021, immediately after whole person care ended, and was really intended to provide the continuity of care for our Pathways clients and serve as the transition program for a large majority of our clients. When the state paused the launch of CalAIM, which we expect it to be a full year delay, so January 1st, 2022, they also understood this created a service gap created for the Pathways or for the whole person care pilot. And so in July, the state announced its intentions to seek an extension of the 1115 waiver, which is the waiver that authorizes whole person care pilots throughout the state. That request was published by the state on July 22nd, and per regulations is currently open for public review and comment. It's anticipated that the state is going to be formally submitting this request to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, at the federal government later this month. And this is where the timing gets really, really challenging. While theoretically CMS could turn this request around before the end of the program in December, given the upcoming federal election, it is anticipated that they may not act on this until after the election. If this is the case, it is possible that we might not know if the program has been extended even until after the expiration of the current program, so into January or potentially February of next year. This obviously creates tremendous challenges for clients who need continued care, for our providers who are holding contracts to provide services, for our funders, and definitely to the city. But perhaps serendipitously, late last winter, before COVID hit, Mayor Steinberg worked with Secretary Galley, who's the Secretary of Health and Human Services at the state, to augment our current whole person care allocation and allow the city to draw down an additional $5 million in federal match above and beyond our current allocation. These funds are going to be paid to the city as an incentive payment for aligning other homeless initiatives that are already underway with the best practices of whole person care, as shown in this diagram. These funds are intended to support the city in continuing work to prevent and end homelessness in the spirit of whole person care. These funds initially were intended to be drawn down in 2 installments at the same time as our regular intergovernmental transfers, which is the funding mechanism we use for whole person care. With this timing, we would have drawn down a portion of the funds this October and the balance of them in May of 2021. However, given the timing challenges associated with this potential extension and all of the timing issues of the federal government, the staff has requested to the state to expedite that second installment to either late December or early January, specifically so these funds can be available as a backstop for Pathways if the waiver extension is delayed. We have not gotten final confirmation from the state, but our initial conversations with the staff are very, very positive that they will pursue an off-cycle transfer for us. So considering the current state of the pilot and the activities at the state and federal levels, there's essentially 3 options which are not mutually exclusive for moving forward, and each has its own pros and cons. So I'm going to quickly walk through these for you. Option 1 would end the program at its current end date of December 31st, 2020, so the next 4 months. Note that even if the state is approved for the waiver extension, locally, the city could choose to opt out and close this program at the end of the year. We are not bound to extend it if the state extends it. This option requires no new funding for the program, but it would have very severe impacts on our providers and clients. There would be no access to CalAIM program to transition clients into, and very little time for us to plan an alternate transition strategy. And while effectively we're right now at program capacity, we would need to immediately stop taking all referrals moving forward, meaning that overall this option would serve the fewest clients. The second option is sort of our wishes and dreams and hopes. It assumes the federal government does approve the waiver extension, and we are able to continue operating Pathways for another full calendar year, ending on December 31st of 2021. This option would provide more than sufficient time for us to work closely with the health plans to provide a thoughtful transition of clients into CalAIM when it starts a year from now, and would have definitely the least impact on our providers. We would be able to continue enrolling clients until mid-year next year, allowing us to serve the most number of clients of any options. However, this program would require identifying up to $8.7 million in local match, or sizing the program to the amount of local match that's available to operate this additional 6th program year. In the case that the federal waiver is approved after January 1st, a portion of the $5 million that I just spoke to could be used to bridge between January 1st and the final approval by the federal government when the waiver is approved, but it would be reimbursable by the extended waiver funds, which would be retroactive. So we have an ability to create a little bridge. The third option is a safety net option to allow the city to pursue the full extension with the federal government, but not leave our providers and clients without the assurance of a transition plan. Option 3 would use a good portion of the $5 million augmentation funds to fund a 4 to 6 month local ramp down program in early 2021 if the federal government waiver is not approved. Clients still wouldn't have access to CalAIM because that launch won't happen until 2022, but we would have some additional time to develop transition plans and step downs into other local programs. I did want to say that unfortunately our health plan partners were not able to participate, but I wanted to share I've had very productive conversations with all 4 of the health systems already about their support, and they have indicated their initial commitment to extending our IGT, our funding arrangements where they provide funds for the IGT and then align their programs with ours. These are important and impactful programs like the interim care program, nurse navigation programs, and other programs the hospitals are already delivering to link individuals with wraparound services. So that's really positive. Given the importance of Pathways in our community's response to end homelessness, the level of need of our clients, as Karen shared, the support of our health systems and health plan partners, staff recommends a 2-prong approach, which would be pursuing the full waiver extension, which is option 2, but simultaneously committing to option 3 should the extension be denied. So today I'm seeking your input on the 3 options and on the staff recommendation. If you do agree with our recommendation, we will immediately develop a funding plan for both scenarios and come back to you by late October with a full funding plan for an actual vote. And then bring the contract extensions to council in late December for a January 1st start. We'll continue to work with the state on that formal extension process, and we'll be able to continue to provide services to those who are currently enrolled. There may be a need to make a small pause in enrollments while we wait for the notification of the extension, but we'll work to keep the core infrastructure of the program as close to capacity so we can quickly pivot and reopen enrollment should the extension be approved. Simultaneously, we will begin working with our partners to reimagine what client transition will look like with the recent changes to CalAIM and the additional time available in whole person care. So with that, my presentation is complete, and Karen and myself are both available to answer any questions.
Thank you both very much. Again, an excellent and thorough presentation and all opportunity. Do we have public testimony on the item?
I have one caller on the line, but they're unresponsive to the call queue operator. Would you like, I have
they're
one
not
caller.
they're not on the line?
They're not responding to her questions. Do you
Okay,
want me to
well,
transfer them in?
We can take them if they call back or
Okay.
whatever. In the meantime, want to open it up to council members. I know, let me ask the first question, which is, so again, the numbers of people that have been served by whole person care is what? Go back to the overall number.
Just over 2,000 as of August. I think my numbers are up to August. Karen's go a little bit further, so probably about 2,100 in total.
And 831 have been housed long-term?
Housed either transitionally or permanently housed and continuing to receive services while they're housed.
And what about the other 1,200 or so?
So some of them are still enrolled and are in shelters. Some of them certainly are unsheltered. And definitely, like any program, we have had people exit without stable housing.
Or maybe you just don't know that they...
Or we just don't know, right.
Families, and they could be housed, right?
Sure. Yes, definitely.
Okay. And how does that success rate, if you will, in terms of housing people compared to other non-whole person care approaches?
So that's a little bit difficult. What I can say is that in our sheltered population, when we had Railroad open, if you recall, we had a very purposeful overlay of whole person care and the Railroad shelter. And we did see that the housing exits for those shelter guests aligned with Pathways was significantly higher than those not engaged with Pathways. So 50% of our clients who were engaged with Pathways while at Railroad exited not to homelessness. Overall, in the whole shelter, it was about 40%, but that was inclusive of the Pathways folks. The challenge that we have, unlike many other traditional housing programs, is we don't have funds. We don't have significant funds for rental subsidies. So unlike the county's flexible supportive rehousing program or a voucher program, our rental subsidies are really limited to what we can link clients to. And so our services in the housing world really are about the housing search and location, case management, those things. But even with that, I'm pretty proud of how well we've been able to house people without having distinct housing funds.
So that begs the question, how is this signature initiative, which was really the first thing we all did together back in 2017, I believe, how does this integrate with, for example, what we did 2 weeks ago with the $60 million homeless plan that encompassed all of the various initiatives, plus the shelter programs that we already have funded and are about to launch?
Yeah, so on shelter programs specifically, as we have transitioned many of our shelters to geographic-based outreach, Pathways is one of the critical components to get people into shelter. So for example, in the River District Shelter Collaborative, the city and the county pursued about a year ago now, when we repositioned those two large shelters, outreach and engagement on the streets happens with outreach partners, and Pathways is one of them. So they can directly refer folks into those shelters and then continue to serve them while they're in there. The other major component that you approved a couple weeks ago was an expansion of the flexible housing program. Now, it was explicitly for the folks in the COVID motels, but as I said, we have a disproportionate number of folks in the COVID motels, somewhat by virtue of the vulnerability of our clients and somewhat by virtue of the fact that we were an outreach touch. And so Pathways will continue to be connected with that, again, providing the supportive services, both looking for housing and then once people get into housing.
Okay. And in terms of what the local match would be for option 2, which is the preferred option because it allows this successful program to be extended through 2021, the $5 million that we were able to get through our work with Secretary Galley would sort of be the insurance policy for how we would pay for most of that?
Well, so our local, if it was to be extended, we would pursue a continuation of the existing local match, which is a combination of funds from the city, from the Homeless Services Division. We put a small amount in, but really the bulk of that comes from the health systems themselves through these IGT agreements that we have with them. And as I indicated, they've indicated that they're likely to continue to support that.
So that $5 million, if we get the federal waiver approved, the health plans continue to participate, which they've said they would, we have this additional $5 million on top of what we've already approved to build upon the various initiatives that we passed a couple of weeks ago, correct?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, the whole person care funding approach is a little bit different than typical funding structures. We will have up to $8.7 million of budget authority from the state. We do not have to draw down the total amount. So when we go back to the drawing board and figure out what is the cost of a program year 6, we will need to come up with half of that. If it might not be that we need the full $8.7 million in budget authority, we might only need $6 million, in which case the local match will shift. But certainly some of that $5 million could go to that. It doesn't have to.
Okay, other members? Anybody else? Nope. Okay. So you want to
Mayor,
action
I
item?
do have one question.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So Emily, if we did that match with the state funds, as part of running the program next year, that would include a ramp down, correct? To finish at the end of the year?
Yes, no matter what, we need a ramp down. And so whether we're ending this December or next December or sometime in the middle of next year, we would develop a ramp down. And so we would never be at full capacity. It's not like the very last day of the program, we would never aim to have 1,000 people enrolled. So part of the shift in the expansion will also include a shift of that transition plan.
So if we use the $5 million of state money as match, where would that get us? Would that get us a little bit more enrollment and then a substantial ramp down?
Right. So you're talking, if we use it for that 4 to 5 month bridge period, how much longer? We anticipate we could keep on enrolling people through the end of September, potentially into October. And so you wouldn't see a huge number because we want to have at least a 4 to 6 month ramp down period. So maybe we could keep on enrolling through, early to late fall of this year. So enrollment and disenrollment really comes and goes every month, but we could probably serve a few hundred more people.
But with healthcare involvement, we could prolong
Yes.
the program.
If the federal waiver is extended and we have a full another year, we can keep on enrolling people well into next summer or early fall.
Okay, thank you.
So for a whole nother year. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions? So you come back with the recommendation. I again would support 2 with 3 as a backup, and we'll bring that before the city council, I guess sometime in October. And the council will weigh in formally. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Karen, as well. Okay, that is the agenda for this afternoon. Is there public testimony for items not on the agenda? We have 4. Let's hear from the public.
Thank you. First caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hi, this is Robert Copeland. I belong to the Sacramento Tenants Union. I would like to see an audit of every agency in the city government, including the police, every agency. 2, reason why voting yes on Measure C, which is rent control, because a lot of people, rent is going up faster than their income, and the city council has no plan to do anything about it. 3, I'm going to vote no on Measure A, the strong mayor, because I don't want any mayor ever have more power than Mayor Steinberg has now. And another reason why there was practically no public outreach for this strong mayor. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Starting now?
Yes, you do. Please start.
Oh, my name is Shia Tao, and I'm a citizen of Sacramento. I don't know if this is the place to come and talk about this, but I got myself into some stuff with a Satanist that was powerful, and I was working in Richmond, and she came to work there, and I think she came to do something to me, destroy me. There's parasites in my eyes and in my body and everything. And this woman, she's working with some people out there in the Bay Area, and they're in and out of my house all the time, doing all kinds of nasty things to me. So with these parasites in my body, I just want to go out there, and I just want to go to the hospital and have you guys help me. And I'm trying to get justice for this because nobody will help me.
Do you live in Sacramento?
Yes.
And you need some help, just a tiny bit more detail, I'm sorry, so we can see how we might help you.
Yeah, I need to go to the hospital because the hospitals won't help me. There's parasites all in my body, in my eye sockets and everything.
Can we get your phone number and we'll have somebody from our city team call you offline? You don't have to give it here, but if we can get the clerk to get your phone number, we will have somebody call you and see how we might try to help you, okay?
Okay, should I speak more or is it?
I have the phone number and we can have
the
someone
city
call
clerk
him
has
back.
the phone number. We will make sure that somebody calls you and see if there's anything we can do to help you.
See, I need to go to the hospital because there's parasites all in my body and my eyeballs. I might go blind.
You might call, how about calling 911 if it's an emergency?
I have to come to you guys because you guys are powerful than those people.
So maybe, sir, I'm just gonna, it's hard for us to, sitting up in the day, so please call 911 and then we will have somebody call you. But we advise you call 911.
I don't think 911 will help me for it because these people are powerful that are doing this to me.
I understand. Take care, sir.
So are you guys going to call me?
Yes, somebody will call you.
Thank
you. You guys got my phone number?
We do,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hello, my name is Regina Brink, and I have come before the council before. I am in District 5 with Jay Chenier, and I am actually today representing the ACB Capital Chapter of the California Council of the Blind. It's come to our attention with public comment here at the meeting and then discussions with the ADA manager, Jamie Kenny, that there has been a moratorium on the meeting with the Disabilities Advisory Commission. It's going on 6 months now that commission is not met, and the answer from the ADA manager was because there are no actionable items. This concerns our community. We work with blind people, but we also have coalitions with people who have blind and low vision people first, but we form coalitions with other disability organizations. And without our voice on the programs you're implementing, which are laudable, you're bringing forth a lot of new proposals, but disabled people are in every single city service, whether it's homelessness, mental health, substance abuse, walkability, transportation, policing, and our needs need to be integrated. And without our voices, we'll not know what those needs are. It's been reported to me that the city is cherry picking which projects are brought before the Disabilities Advisory Commission. That is extremely unacceptable to us as an organization, and we are asking that the council take steps to remedy this, that the ADA manager have a conversation with us, and that we get that input from the disability community going.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Brink. Ms. Brink, your time is complete. Do you want to make a final comment?
Yes, and just integrating other organizations as well besides that commission. Thank you.
Stay on the line for just a moment.
So, Mayor, I'm
City
going to have
Manager.
somebody from our HR department follow up here, too.
Okay, we'll have somebody from the HR department at the city follow up and try to get to the heart of your concern and try to remedy it, okay?
Yeah, it's my understanding that the Disability Advisory Commission is meeting next month, but I will ask the HR representative to reach out to Ms. Brink.
Okay, it sounds like there's some concern about how the agenda is set and whether or not their issues are being are being agendized to be discussed. So let's get in the middle of it and try to help and figure it out. Okay, we'll see what it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it?
Next caller, please.
Okay.
We have one more caller. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hello, yes. My name is Lambert Davis of To the Bay and Back Cheesecakes in Del Paso Heights, specifically. I wanted to say that I have been in the queue since number 16, and I never was let in. So I want to comment to the people that were part of the Measure U Advisory Committee. I hope they do give me a call. My number is 916-370-9211. I was very impressed with them. I actually got to see a face on a committee that appeals to me because I was lobbied to vote twice on Measure U, which I did. And our company submitted a proposal back in January that to me was directly affected by COVID. I also want to announce that during Labor Day, we went viral, and I would like to make that known to the city council, the mayor, city manager. You're looking at a potential goose that lays a golden egg. We actually want to hire people in Del Paso Heights. You cannot make a cheesecake by a computer. You have to have human beings. And when you look at what we bring to the table, very few people are bringing guaranteed profits. We're going into the fall, the holidays, the elections, and we've planted some very powerful seeds that we're going to cultivate, but we need funding to make that happen. So I hope that committee, all three of them, I'll bet my life that one of those three like cheesecake, if not all three. And I bet you someone in their family likes cheesecake because cheesecake appeals to most races and both sexes, which causes the ability to carve a niche. Not too many people are talking about guarantees. We also were just lobbied to renew with the Better Business Bureau. I was against it, but because they recruited us in such a positive way, I signed it on the dotted line last week.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is complete. Will you make your final comment, please?
The Better Business Bureau does not pursue you to renew if you don't have integrity.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davis. All right, are there council ideas and questions? Vice Mayor Harris?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a couple of announcements.
Jeff, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now? No? Not muted.
Jeff,
we can hear you.
Can't hear you, Vice Mayor.
Somebody can hear me. So, yeah, I have a couple of announcements. First is the North.
There may be internet issues. I know there are internet issues. They're on my home. So,
can other
Mayor,
council members hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Jeff.
I think you may have to wait till next week here, sir, because we're not hearing you.
Problem in the council chambers?
There's something. Go ahead. We hear you now.
Okay. Well, the other members can hear me, so I'll just launch in. Northgate Park Tennis Court Survey, the Youth Parks Commission, the Youth Parks and Community Enrichment Department is proposing to convert the tennis courts at Northgate Park into a second futsal court, and we've created a short survey. We'd like you to take it, visit my council website to participate in the survey, and we need your answers by tomorrow. Stanford Settlement Food Drive. We've been working with the Stanford Settlement to distribute food and masks to the community, and it's going quite well. They're accepting donations for their food drive, and we intend to continue this through the end of the year. You can visit stanfordsettlement.org for more details. Gardenlands Northgate Neighborhood Association, their monthly meeting is Thursday, September 10th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Please go to gnna.info for Zoom details. And South Natomas United, a new neighborhood group, is hosting a Neighborhood Watch Town Hall Wednesday, September 9th from 7 to 8:30. Please visit southnatomasunited.com for Zoom details. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. Any other council ideas or questions? If there isn't, thank you very much for a good meeting. Thank you to members of the public and the city staff. Colleagues, we are adjourned.